What is up, everyone? Welcome to yet another Warski Live. How you all doing? Hope you're all doing fantastic. Here with JF as usual. What up, JF?
Andy, I almost want to vomit. This is way too Canadian.
What? Oh.
Canadian stutterer as a host. I have a guy with a Canadian flag. What the fuck is this?
What is up, everyone?
Oh
my God. Are you kidding me? Whoa, 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 whoa. How you all doing? Hope you're all doing fantastic.
Do we have feedback?
Well, I hear an echo, but I don't see where the show is happening.
It was my fault. I'm sorry, Andy.
I literally spent 20 minutes, and I'm like, I'm not going to fuck up this time. This time, it was you. Thank God. Oh,
Andy,
I'm actually happy you fucked up.
I'm a Superman of the internet. I have so much things going on. I have so much virtual cables. It's easy to confuse myself with my virtual cables, especially when I do that kind of thing. Andy, we are April 12th. This is Warski Live. Khloe Kardashian gives birth to baby girl amid Tristan Thompson cheating scandal. Sargon of Akkad takes position against the war in Syria, and he appeals to people not engaging based on what he calls a false flag. And Fox News denies the allegations that it was involved in a donation event linked to Bill O'Reilly. They state that they were not aware that you could donate thousands of dollars to be meeting the Fox and Friends team. How are you doing, Andy?
Like, is this a thing now? Is this like... But do we even, talk about the stuff? Or is it just like, here's the news. All right, peace out news. Let's move on.
We can talk about it. What do you think about Khloe Kardashian? I think she's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I'd do it. How about you? Sorry.
I don't really think about it too much, to be honest. Sorry, I ain't got too much to say about that.
She is 33 and she gave birth at the hospital outside of Cleveland.
Who gives a fuck?
Everyone gives a fuck. It's Khloe Kardashian. You need to keep up with the Kardashians.
Oh, it's just mindless bullshit. Oh, okay, anyway, let's introduce our guest today. We have Ronny Cameron. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, Andy?
How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Glad to be on the show. Huge fan.
Awesome. Thanks for being on here. And someone else just popped in, and this is Atavisonary.
Hello, Atavisonary. Oh, well, he's going to set his mic. But anyways, while he sets up his mic, I wanted to talk about what our two guests come to talk about. First, Atavisonary is the author of Smart and Sexy, which is a book about intelligence and relationships, and in particular, IQ and how it affects personal relationships. And Ronny is a white nationalist who has, Andy, a black girlfriend.
I have a lot of questions about this. Wait, hang on. Before we start, apparently there's a group of people called the Bully Hunters.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are.
Hello.
What's up,
yes,
man?
Yes, we can hear you.
Do you hear us? I'm going to say no. You can't hear us?
So, Atavisonary, you need
hear me?
to...
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Do you hear us? There
Hello.
you go. Oh boy. Yeah. Yes. We can.
Okay.
Oh
so
God.
you need to set his
You
audio
need to try to figure that
reception.
out.
So you were talking about Billy the Anti-Bully, Andy?
No. It's a group called
Hmm.
the Anti-Bullies, but it's not Billy. There's a group of like SJW-esque people who apparently are going to start streaming and battling back against online bullies.
Andy, why is it that every time I hear about SJWs coming strong, I hear about it, that it's about to happen, but I don't see it happening?
Well, apparently it's tonight. The attack is tonight. They
And
planned.
what are they gonna do?
I think just battle bullies. Maybe us, maybe Tonka. Apparently, they've been revving up their engines, and also against online bullies, the ones that are on video games, the ones who swear at you and say the N-word the whole time. You know what I mean? Those guys.
Okay.
So,
Something tells me that they're going to have their own judgment of what a bully is, and they're going to use that to fight against the right.
I hope they call the bullies faggots or something. And then you're like, whoa, hang on. Like, you fucking retard. It's on right now, apparently. It's on right now, apparently. So just keep me updated with what's happening with those guys, because apparently it's supposed to be fucked up and epic. So we will update people as this happens. But right now, I have to ask some questions here. So Cameron. Oh, sorry, Ronny. I'll call you Ron. Is that cool?
Yeah, Ron's good, man.
All right, cool. Ron, you're a white nationalist. Is that true?
I would define myself as a white nationalist, but the way most people interpret that, they go a little too extreme and associate it with like Nazis and white supremacy. I guess, ethno-nationalist would be the flavor of the month. So I can go with that. But yeah, white nationalist, I think, is actually the correct way to define it.
Now, when we hear white nationalist, we think what? Someone who just likes white people more than any other race. Is this true?
Yeah, I think people that's like the common perception people have. Like there's a lot of like hate that's associated with like white nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, Andy, I disagree with that definition. To me, white nationalism, there's the word nation in there. And so to me, white nationalism is simply the desire either to be in a nation that is defined around a certain ethnicity or race, which is white people in that case, and nationalism, or not being in that country, but wanting to create such a country, or wanting to shape the immigration policy such that this country remains. That's what nationalism is to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think ethno-nationalism applies more to like a global perspective, because we could be talking about Japan, we could be talking about China, but I think most people in the West are concerned about Western countries. So I think it's accurate to say white nationalist.
Now, all right, that's all fine and dandy, but you're dating a black chick.
Yes, to be fair, she is mixed, but know,
thank God! Like all right, never mind. That's just kidding.
Yeah, right.
So, all right, she's mixed now. Does that not really line up with being a white nationalist?
Some would say so, yes. The way that I look at it is most ethno-nationalists or white nationalists do have black friends or brown friends or Asian friends. They don't necessarily need to apply their political views to every single aspect to their personal life. Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, just making friends with somebody who's another race, the same thing can happen with falling in love, with meeting somebody who I guess you might consider a deviation from the norm. And I would say on average, white people don't typically date black people, more so I guess white males, but it does happen. And sometimes, you have those similarities or things that you can relate on. So, yeah.
Now,
so Atavisonary, did you fix your problem? Are you with us? Oh my God! I'm muting again.
Technical difficulties.
Tell him he has to. Are we talking? Or tell him to hit the cog and make sure that his input is his headphones. All right. Yeah. So okay. Does your girlfriend know that you're a white nationalist?
Oh yeah. We have some interesting discussions. Like I'm telling you, these discussions that we could get into, they have like millions of views on YouTube if she was willing to do it. But she doesn't really want to be in front of the camera or anything like that. But yeah, she for the most part completely understands what I'm saying. We have some interesting conversations. Like, say we go to the movie theater, and you have like a quick decision to decide where you're gonna sit down. In Scarborough, there's a lot of black people here, and she'll be the first one to say, yeah, I don't really want to sit beside a group of black people because there's a good chance that they might be talking through the movie. So she can kind of relate in a lot of like, I guess, like simple ways of how we do just naturally want to be around white people. And as a Black girl, she can identify with that. She does want to be in a white area for the most part. It's not like she's going to just pick her friends by the color of her race, but just in terms of making snap decisions, like I described in the movie theater, or like what area you want to live in, which is like a bigger thing. She can relate with me on a lot of things.
So would she build a society? Would she basically want to be part of an ethnostate, a white ethnostate?
It all depends on what the tone and what the attitude is. If it's filled with people who are like wanting 100% purity, then absolutely not. But if it's kind of like, 85% and people who want to be a part of it will be welcome, then yes, absolutely.
All right, we have Tavit and Ross, $50 US. He says it doesn't have to apply to who you are friendly with, but it very much applies to who you reproduce with. This guy sounds like a LARPer. So I guess there's two elements to this. First, don't you consider that you are part of the problem of race mixing in the event that you would have children? You would essentially contribute to the disintegration of the white race. And secondly, are you a LARPer? That means to what extent are you really a white nationalist?
Okay, well, I'm gonna actually give a weird example here. The way that Homo sapiens kind of dominated over Neanderthals was just breeding them out, and a lot of the times that's what races do to kind of like dominate over others. So I think I could totally use the argument that there is a bit of assimilation going on here on both sides. And typically, if say a stereotypical example, a white chick gets together with a Black guy, there's a good chance that the offspring are going to be more Black cultured, and especially if they're living in a Black area. So I do feel that there are ways to kind of bring people into the white race, and it actually ends up having benefits. Like mating with the Neanderthals, I'm sure all non-sub-Saharan Africans have a bit of Neanderthal DNA in them, and I think that actually gave us an advantage. Spanish people, Greek people, they're known for having like beautiful skin tone, and I think a little bit of mixing can actually improve a race. So in terms of like 100% pure ethnicity or race, everybody in Canada or America, you can't say you're 100% British or Scott, most people anyways. So I do think that whiteness is real, absolutely. And, I definitely think that people need to recognize that exists not just on like a social level, it's biological. But yeah, I do believe that we can assimilate other people into whiteness.
Are you a troll?
Absolutely not.
You're not a troll.
No.
So Ronny, you are going out there. You're like the fisherman of the genes. You're going at the forefront of the exploration of genetic integration.
Well, it's not like something that I do intentionally. It's something that I could say that if people were to do what I'm doing, it wouldn't necessarily lead to the fall of the white race. And assimilating people into other races has been done through time. Like as you described in your other episode, European Jews are basically the result of Arab men mating with white European women. And that's a perfect example of how they assimilated white women into their culture and reproduced. So the same thing can happen reverse. I don't think you could come up with a logical rebuttal to that.
I mean, a logical rebuttal. We're talking about personal preferences, and to this extent, I'm a libertarian, so I'm fine with you doing this.
Same, of course.
But going back on the question of the credibility as a white nationalist, it's kind of bizarre because you acknowledge that if everyone was to do your actions, this would lead to the destruction of the white race.
Not necessarily, because as of now, there's still a lot more of us than there is of them, so to say.
Like I'm fine with race mixing and dating whoever you want. I'm cool with that, but calling yourself a white nationalist is a stretch, in my opinion.
I totally hear that argument, right? Like the two just it doesn't seem to make sense, and that's why I was totally willing to come on and talk about this, because it's something not too many people are ever really going to get a chance to hear. So I figure, yeah, this is perfect material for the Andy Morsley show.
Isn't it? Isn't that like being against gay people, but sucking a dick from time to time?
The difference is I'm not against black people. I'm for white people. So it's I'm not somebody who advocates for going out and being violent or for hating people based on the color of their skin. I'm somebody who acknowledges that generalities are real. In terms of large numbers, the races are very different. I can bring up the example of how there hasn't been a single non-black person to win a 100-meter or 200-meter race in the Olympics. But that's not to say that you can't have an extremely athletic white guy capable of making the team. And if I was a black person, I would acknowledge that blacks are for sure superior in terms of athletic ability. But it's not like I would be like, oh my God, here's this white guy who can make the team, and be like, well, no, because of my political opinions, I have to not appreciate this guy's ability. So like I said before, I don't really think there are too many ethno-nationalists now who would say they hate people of other races. I think most of them actually have friends and associate with people of other races. So I don't really think you could hammer down the hypocrisy in me dating somebody who's not white when other people are perfectly fine with associating with people of other races. And most ethno-nationalists would say they would be open to anywhere from 5 to 15% of quote diversity within the ethno state.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that this is hypocrisy necessarily, but I think there are contradictions that emerge, and I'm curious about them. For example, Hot Perrier, $5 US, says, how do you reconcile the fact that your children will be mixed race while being a white nationalist? And Wasatchman, $5 US, says he is proposing the Sargon Plan, breed basketball Americans out of existence through race mixing. And Snooch says $10 US, he says, JF, slay the slarp. So I'm wondering, because it's easy to say, oh, I just like the white race. I don't hate the others. However, if you like something more than something else, you have an ordered set of preferences. And if you are a white nationalist, you believe that the white people will lead to better societies in some way. And white nationalists don't even agree on what that thing is, but they kind of all converge toward the belief that white societies led to something better, and they want to maintain that state of thing. And that white people ultimately are better on some measures. And is it a statement that you agree with, that white people and white societies are better?
Yeah, I think on average, if you want to just give a general term, I won't cut out from that and be like, oh, well, there's some benefits to African culture or Haitian culture. No, in general, Western cultures, I feel, are superior. Western nations are superior. And I think that's actually a direct result of white people existing here on the planet. I truly believe that European culture emerges on some level from European biology. Same thing with Chinese culture and whatnot. But like I said before, there's always deviations from the norms. There's always outliers. You're always going to have, a star white athlete in the NFL that can play with the black guys. You're always going to have a Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you shouldn't reject somebody's merits, their individual value based on the norm. And I think we all do that. JF, I'm sure you have friends that aren't white, yet you call yourself an ethno-nationalist. If we were to form an ethno state, I don't think you would want to just say, okay, we can't be friends anymore. And I think it's quite possible for even you to fall in love with somebody who's not white. Maybe you might draw the line and say, okay, I'm not going to go down this path because of my political beliefs. But yeah, in terms of the other question that you asked me about having kids, or I don't know if it was you who asked or if it was a super chat.
The super chat, yeah.
Yes, the super chats. I do believe that like I said before, there are advantages to having mixed races, so to say. I think if you look at say, on a kind of a funny level, like Tiger Woods, a lot of people said, he has the mind of an Asian and a white man and the physicality of a black guy. It's kind of like a humorous example. But I do think that's kind of, I think, there's some truth to that.
All right, so Atavisonary, do you hear us now? He doesn't look like he can hear us. I think this guy has too many technical problems, so we're going to have to continue the episode with Ronny. I agree with you that there can be advantages to race mixing, but typically the belief of white nationalists is that the advantages are not big enough to, and people are telling me my mic is not strong enough. Well, that's the maximum. So you're gonna have to ask Andy to change his things on his side.
I fixed it. I fixed it so you can lower your volume a bit. I raised your volume.
All right, you raised my volume. Yeah, so the idea of white nationalism is that these advantages to race mixing are not worth the disadvantage. And the disadvantage is that the people we let enter our countries through immigration or other minorities that have arrived in the country through other means, they are possibly threatening the existence of white societies. And that your actions are undeniably part of the contribution to this. I mean, you say, okay, there's an individual, she has qualities. I accept that. An individual can have qualities and she can have merit. However, the genes that she's carrying, there's no guarantee that they will show with the same quality in your children. Do you recognize that by choosing race mixing, even race mixing with an individual who has qualities, you may be stuck in the problem that we call in science regression to the mean, which is that sometimes genes can lead to specific individual being outside of the norm of their group. However, if you look at their children and their children and the children of their children, you will see that they converge back to the mean of their group. Do you acknowledge that your choice may, in the long run, participate to this disintegration of your own descendants, and eventually, if many people do like you, in the disintegration of white societies?
Yes, I do acknowledge that if everybody were to do what I'm doing, that it could lead to the disintegration of whiteness. And like I said before, it is kind of like a numbers game. If there's, say, 80% population of white people and they do kind of assimilate a smaller group, that could be advantageous for white people. That definitely is a factor. Now, to address what you're saying specifically, there's kind of like a rolling of the dice. But I think you can kind of wipe that away by judging the person's individual merit, their individual values. Like, say we look at Neil deGrasse Tyson. He is Black. He belongs to a group that is most likely to have an IQ of, say, around 90%. Would you agree?
Yep.
But would you also agree that Neil deGrasse Tyson's IQ is probably over 120?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if a white person were to have, if a white female were to have kids with Neil deGrasse Tyson, the chances of their kids having a high IQ, being well behaved and well managed and all of that would be perfectly fine. So
here's the wrong assumption, and that's the assumption that's wrong by the standard of deviation toward the mean. So you can have exceptional individuals that are outside of the norm of their group. However, what I can say about Neil deGrasse Tyson's children and the sequence of events that will lead in the next 100 years, all of the descendants of Neil deGrasse Tyson, if they reproduce with Black people, they will on average converge back toward the mean of the 90 rather than the 120.
Yes, if they continue, the odds of that happening, absolutely. But if we look at, like, say, individuals, like, let's say, for instance, you have a star white athlete, he's going to transfer over strong athletic genes, even though they are a deviation from the norm. So I could make the argument that on average, if Blacks were to mate with whites in large numbers, that their overall athletic ability might go down. But in terms of individuals, if a Black mates with an athletic white, the odds of them being athletic are just as likely if they were Black, probably even more so. And the same thing with selecting a mate. If you meet a Black girl who is really smart, really nice, really funny, all that kind of stuff, you can kind of wipe away the generalities. And you wouldn't just be like, well, she can't be smart, she can't be funny, she can't have good genes, she's Black. I don't really think there's any ethno-nationalists that would deny that there are incredibly intelligent and capable Black people. We just acknowledge that in large numbers, it's not really good to have a lot of them around.
I don't deny that, but the way Jordan Peterson explains it is as follows. Suppose you have a 110 IQ person reproducing with a 120 IQ person. Now, the instinctive response to this is on what is the chance, what is the best prediction you could do about their child's IQ, supposing that IQ is genetic and removing all sorts of environmental factor. And many people answer 115. And that's a lack of understanding of regression to the mean. The answer is start at 115 and get closer to 100. So the IQ of the child is more likely to be 112, 113, and not 115. That's the phenomenon of regression to the mean, which is that even if you have observations that are outside of the norm, the statistics push you toward the mean out of the pure randomness of the reality of IQ. Now, Tevit Andros says $20 US. A lot of white people have a small percentage of some other race mixed in, but we don't try to intentionally mix more. I feel something fishy going on here with this guy. And I like the Spikeman, $20 US, says, I feel really bad for this dude. He is clearly confused and is looking for attention via being edgy. Dude probably watched two Sam Hyde and a Murdoch vid. Please read some Rockwell, Darwin, or Murray. And Vinny S, $10, says, I'm pretty sure the Spanish tried this before. The result was the least developed part of Latin America. Brett Shaft, $10 US. The advantage of race mixing is beneficial, as is a wealthy man becoming a citizen of an impoverished country. His kids will be better than the average, but most likely poorer than if he stayed home. That is a beautiful metaphor. Andy, you were talking?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like, and I'm fine because I'm not a white nationalist. I don't give a fuck. But it doesn't sound like you're a white nationalist, because if you believe, white nationalists believe that white people's genes are the superior gene, therefore they want it to grow. They want it to, expand. And what you're saying with the examples of Neil and Tiger, you're saying that the genes don't matter because the qualities will be passed on that aren't a genetic but are taught by the parents.
No, it's quite simple. On an individual level, we shouldn't judge people based on their race. But in terms of large numbers, we should. And I don't think JF would argue against that. I think he would agree that, yeah, absolutely. What separates a modern white nationalist or ethno-nationalist from your typical rebel flag waving, toothless hick down in the South who's just angry at other races is that it's not necessarily about being superior in every sense. And it's not about ruling over another race. It's about acknowledging differences. It's about acknowledging that in large numbers, there's going to be massive impacts. Look at the crime rates. The prison system is filled with blacks. In Canada, it's filled with blacks and natives and basically everybody who's not white. When you look at who's struggling most in schools, when you look at say New York gang stats, only 0.5% of the youth gangs are comprised of white youth. So you have to be an idiot not to acknowledge this. But equally are you an idiot if you assume every black person is a gangbanger or every Mexican is an illegal immigrant or something. Every intelligent person who's an ethno-nationalist acknowledges that there are outliers, deviations from the norm, and you would never judge that individual and hold them tied down to their race. It's just like a black person saying, what, you're white? You can't play basketball. I would agree, in large numbers, white people suck compared to blacks. And in large numbers, blacks, I can explain it. Blacks have more testosterone and lower IQ. And the perfect mixture for predicting criminal behavior is just that, low IQ and high testosterone. They also have a higher fight or flight response. But does that mean that every single black person is going to behave that way? No. And unless you can prove that an individual's genes are just automatically going to be a representative of the generality and not have any bearing on the individual himself, I feel like I have a rock solid argument.
I don't think any white nationalist says all. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But this is how's have you ever gone to her family's, your girlfriend's family's a house for a holiday or something? Is it awkward?
No, not at all. They don't follow what I do, and I don't really necessarily just focus on things like, white nationalism or the race wars or culture wars, or, I talk a lot about Trudeau, I talk a lot about Antifa. So yeah, they don't really necessarily follow me. We don't really talk about that, to be honest.
Well, I don't think you'd bring it up. Sounds like it'd be
Well,
awkward.
her mom is Irish and Cuban, so like her mom is very much white, and like we've talked about how like diversity hiring practices are complete bullshit, and how society is basically assuming all white people are racist. We talk about how we're considered the majority in our city, yet we are the minority in Toronto. White people only represent about like 30% of the population. So I mean, if we talk about the aspects that affect white people, I'm sure somebody like me and JF would agree on pretty much everything. The only difference is whether or not mixing with somebody else will contribute to the decline of the white race if that individual happens to be a deviation from the norm. And I would say that a white woman having kids with Neil deGrasse Tyson does not hurt the white race.
I'm not sure I would agree with this statement. You could argue that it's a small hurt. You could argue that the damage is so small as to be you can ignore it. However, you recognize that take that act and multiply it by 100 million, and America becomes non-white tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as we keep bringing in mass amounts of immigration, or mass amounts of immigrants, and white people continue to not have kids, white people continue to have abortions, eventually there's going to be a white genocide.
I mean, personally, I don't have strong objections to what you say there, and
Thank
I
you,
do agree
JF.
that there is a definition of white nationalists where it works. However, there are definitions of white nationalism where it doesn't work, where you are acting against certain beliefs in white nationalism, such as if you were to state, for example, that not only is it a desirable state that society be white and that we preserve white genes in our society, but it's also a personal responsibility of every white nationalist to maintain that state of affair, you would be in violation of such a description of white nationalism.
I would agree. I think you can kind of make a semantics argument. I think that's kind of what Andy was going at originally. And yeah, there's different definitions. The alt-right is totally divided. There are some people that would look at me and hate me more than a civic nationalist because, I don't have a white girlfriend. And I can understand that. Doesn't mean that I agree with it, but I can definitely understand that the alt-right, the ethno-nationalist scene is very much divided. And I think, people like you, people who are more on the intellectual side, they can completely understand where I'm coming from. Even somebody like Richard Spencer, I think he would definitely disagree, but I think he would understand exactly what I'm saying. And, the argument with Homo sapiens Neanderthals, I think is a really good argument. I'm glad that the majority of our genes are Homo sapien, but the only species or subspecies of human that doesn't have Neanderthal genes is sub-Saharan. And I've postulated before to many people that perhaps the Neanderthal gene is what's responsible for why we're so much more evolved. And I'd like to see more research into that. I'd like to see you look into that more, JF.
It's kind of a bad parallel though, because there was no, like 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, there was no Homo sapiens nationalism, and therefore there's no Homo sapiens that have violated his own beliefs.
JF, there was tribalism.
There was tribalism, but there's no Homo sapiens that has violated his stated beliefs in the purity of the Homo sapiens race at the time by fucking a Homo Neanderthal woman.
Your argument would only work by tying me down to a definition that I don't adhere to. Like I said before, there's different definitions of ethno-nationalism, and some people would call you a cuck and say that if you even have friends of a different race, or if you even want to have 5% impurity, that you're a cuck. So you would kind of be making the same argument in that sense, but like specifically with Neanderthals, like they actually were more advanced than sub-Saharan Africans. So some people could say, oh, this is a ridiculous argument, but I'm being honest. If Neanderthals were around today, the SJWs would be trying to figure out ways to get them hired into your school. And it's not a ridiculous thing to say that, oh, they're below human. In fact, they were right on par. We just outbred them. And by bringing in some of their genes, it made us stronger. And I can honestly say that if we had, say, 10% African genes, we would be on average a bit taller. We would be on average a bit more athletic. And straight up, Jay, we would on average have a bit bigger of a penis.
Jeff, if I may ask you a question, when it comes to this whole issue, how would you enforce it in a country that's kind of already blended as it is? Regardless of whether you think it's a good idea or not, how would you enforce that, the quote-unquote ethno-state?
I wouldn't enforce it. I would rely on the free association between white people, and I would create a state. The way it would be enforced is basically by immigration control. So I would ensure that most people breed inside the nation, not out of constraint on their liberty, but out of the simple fact that there would not be much immigrants within the nation.
Okay, so basically no illegal immigrants, which, by the way, I'm already against that, because regardless of whether you're civic or ethno-nationalist, that's kind of a common thing you have to be. But on another level, these genes that are coded for things like, being taller, if you're black, being whatever, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of anything at the moment, but these things that definitely are real and separate most races, they don't necessarily happen for no reason. And if we're able to breed with each other, meaning we're a part of the same species, how much is race really dividing us as a species? Because clearly there's a bigger difference between a man and a woman versus a black man and a white man. Like, to what degree?
Yeah, well, there's two components to this question. First, what divides us as races? It's exactly what science can measure. So it's the look on our face, the behavioral differences that are measured, the criminality level that are measured, the IQ differences that are measured, the behavior in the couple which are measured, the outcomes that are different in mixed race couple as opposed to the same race couple. In fact, even races that have the highest amounts of violence in the relationship, they have a higher violence rate when they are in mixed couples. So, for example, a black man in a relationship is 7 times more likely to commit homicide of his wife if she's white, rather than if she was black. So that's another thing about mixing genes that have not evolved together. You are faced with a situation that the genes are not adapted to this new reality. The genes have not prepared themselves to be with a white wife, and this triggers all sorts of conflict and all sorts of potential violence. Now, you ask then about the difference between male and females. Yes, male and females probably differ. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily more than two males of a given race, but they differ across dimensions that are very different, and the differences are major physically, psychologically, and physiologically. But the fact that it's not because these two things are different that they need to live separate. Male and female differentiation in white societies as a function, and in fact, in all of the animal kingdom, it has a function. This distinction between male and female emerges from the fact that they have different roles in the family. So it has a function, and it makes sense that the female is more equipped to give birth to baby, and the male is more equipped to be competitive outside of the home.
Oh, yeah, like, because, basically that's essentially the yin and yang, except coded into biology. But what I meant is more like just how much of a severe difference in psychology alone. And also, because you're a scientist, so you should know this, there's definitely a certain factor you have to bring in when it comes to, like, all this, which is that you have to look at one variable at a time, because when you look at a lot of the cultures that have primarily black populations, and within those black populations, there's very little monogamy, and as we know, that definitely can cause people to have shorter telomeres, not having a father around. That's actually been studied. So how much of it is really reliant on culture versus just genes?
I don't know at all about the statement you just made. Telomeres and monogamy, I'm not aware of any link between these. And Kev OS comes with a super chat, $2 Canadian. I want to deny this. He says, doesn't JF have a Hapa son, yet ethno-nationalist? I don't have an Hapa son. My son is white. I don't know where you got this information.
Wait, and before we continue, Jeremy, what's up, man?
Hey, guys, what's up? I'm feeling a lot better, so how you doing, Andy?
Awesome, man. Thanks for being back. So can you just introduce yourself? Everyone's
Yeah,
like,
hi.
who the fuck is this Jeremy guy? He just hopped in.
I'm your daddy, motherfuckers.
Oh boy.
My name is Jeremy. Jeremy Summers. I run a YouTube channel called Arcean. It's where I take on the persona of an angel that I've named Arcean, kind of the way Sargon uses Sargon of Akkad, but his real name's Carl. And up until a while back, I was just using that name, but eventually people started making connections with that in an old, really cringy and terribly built YouTube channel that I had where I did movie reviews. So eventually I just came out with my name. And I do political commentary that's more right-leaning.
All right, awesome, man. Thanks for being here. And have you heard about Ronny? Like, did you hear what we were talking about before you hopped in?
All secondhand. All secondhand.
All right, yeah. So, I mean, JF seems confused a little bit.
Did I confuse JF?
I think you
No,
did.
I mean, I'm confused as much as if I saw a priest preach on the public space that homosexuality is wrong, and then I was to learn that he sucks dick in the bathrooms every Saturday at 3 p.m. It's not confusion. I know this is the reality of human nature. He likes to suck dicks, and so he puts dick in his mouth. But there is an undeniable contradiction, which is fine. It's fine to live with contradictions, but there is a contradiction.
Actually, I would ask
You
one
are
thing.
participating. Go ahead and
Yeah, Ronny, when you started seeing this chick, were you like, oh, fuck, God damn it, I like her? Were you upset about it?
Well, I can just throw it right back at say JF. JF, if you meet a black dude who's really cool and you get along with him, are you like, oh, fuck? It's
The
the
thing
same
is,
argument.
you keep going back to
I
this
keep making
example.
it, and you can't get away from that because you know there's deviations from the norm, and you know that not every individual should be enslaved to their stereotype. So I can make all sorts of different examples. You said that it's somehow comparable to for a priest to be sucking cock. Well, here's the thing: are you against black people, JF? Like, your analogy can only work if you say that you yourself are against black people, but you know the subject is so much more nuanced. You would say that I'm against massive amounts of black people living amongst whites. I think you would even argue that there are such things as moderate Muslims. There are probably really cool, even trannies that you would get along with, but you would still have completely different political views. And I really don't see how you could penetrate that argument. You could only try to make comical examples there, like clearly your priest is just, a humorous stab. There's no real intellectual component to that argument.
No. There is an intellectual component, but you deny it in a fallacious manner. First, you say, my comparison with the priest would only be valid if the priest hated homosexual, or if I hated...
He was against them. Against it is the word I use.
No, I took an example where the priest would be preaching not against homosexuals as individual, but against homosexuality.
Am I preaching against blacks, JF?
No, you are acting in a way that is contradictory in some way with the preservation of the white race.
So then I would argue that you having a black friend or having black associates is the equivalent.
And if you let me talk more than 30 seconds, I will answer all of your points.
Oh boy.
So first, you keep bringing that example back of me having black friends. First, I don't have black friends. I don't have friends at all. And so this is not an example. The second is, even if I had black friends, I wouldn't be demolishing the white race with them because I wouldn't make babies with them. So that's the contradiction that is present in your life wouldn't be present in my life. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong to live with contradictions. I'm a moral nihilist, and I've said multiple times on the public space, humans are just animals, and it's fine. We contradict our systems of belief. But let's not hide ourselves from this contradiction. It exists. It's there.
Okay, well, again, I have to make the argument that it's not that ethno-nationalists just hate the color of black skin or just hate the fact that black people look different. The only aspect really to ethno-nationalism is acknowledging that in large numbers, there are these extreme differences. But when it comes to an individual, you would never sit there and be like, well, he has these biological differences and he speaks a little different, so therefore I'm going to judge him harshly. No intelligent ethno-nationalist thinks along those terms. So again, when it comes to mating with somebody who's of another race, if they have strong genes, if they're a smart person, they are likely to pass on those. And if we do assimilate small amounts of other races into our whiteness, so to say, it can be something like, say, Spain, where I think Spanish chicks having that like olive skin tone is awesome. Irish people, British people, we burn easily. I could make a lot of arguments for how Italians and Greeks and Spanish people have benefits due to their mixing with other races. Now, if they were to do it where it was like, say, 80% North Africans mixing with Greeks, now you have a depletion. But when it's 80% Greeks mixing with North Africans, there are some advantages there. And I don't think people can really deny it. But I would agree with you, Jeff. Your strongest point is that I'm rolling the dice. But everybody's rolling the dice. Even if you have kids, say you mate with a white chick, there's a chance your kids could breed with somebody who's not white. There's always that chance. And if, say, my kids end up breeding with a white person, it's gonna go back more along the white lines.
I'm happy that you recognize this point, because I think that also one other fallacy that you make is this idea that statistics do not boil down to personal predictive power. They do. The statistics that there's 7 times more homicide in mixed race couple than there is in non-mixed race couple.
But you're only looking at big numbers, Jay.
No. Let me finish this, Ronny, because it seems you have a brain that can only track single sentences. I make long paragraphs because I have a PhD. I'm an intelligent man.
Resorting to insults and now posturing with credentials.
The appeal to authority fallacy. That's nice.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not saying that I'm right because I have a PhD. I'm saying I'm interesting, lovable, and desirable. Fuck you, Jeremy, by the way. And so, Ronny, all of the knowledge that you acquire on a group leads to personal predictive power. Now you can say, oh, it's just predictive power. Well, it's a reality. Predictive power is a reality. The fact is, if I measure on 100 million mixed couples that there is an 80% chance that it fails, whereas same race couple, there's a 50% chance that they fail. This allows you to gather knowledge on your relationship. It's not going to be certain, but it is information, and you are deciding to not acknowledge this information or not use it in your personal life, which is fine. I'm a libertarian, but let's not hide ourselves. What you call playing with dice is actually ignoring factual information that may allow you to make predictions that are valid in your life.
Okay, well, I'm going to dismantle that very easily. Say you have an NBA star, white guy who's 6'7", and he mates with a black person. Based on your logic, the generalities and the law of averages would somehow just take over his genes and make it so that his kids are most likely to fit the norm of white people. But that argument is so false because it only applies to big numbers. You can say, yes, out of 1 million people, for sure. But if you isolate it down to an individual, whether it's an intelligent black person or a very physical white person, you cannot tell me, JF, that the laws of big numbers are somehow going to just strip them of their individual genetic reality. And you know that if a 6'5" white person has sex with another tall person, the odds of their kids being tall are greater. It's not like it just goes back to the average of white people. Like, you can't make that argument.
Wait, I don't think that's quite what JF. I don't think that's quite what JF was saying. Because this is behavioral, which is more universal, but also as a counter to both of what you were saying. These patterns are only looking at one factor, race, but that's not very scientific. You have to isolate these things at a time. You're not looking at, like I said, the breakup of the nuclear or black family that tends to be in almost all places where black people are, which will actually, and yes, there are studies that I mentioned earlier that prove that when a father's not present in the home, it's more likely that kid's telomeres will shrink faster than someone who has a father in the home. There's actually been studies, and I can link that if you like.
I agree, but there still is a genetic component. And if say, for instance, I hate to use the argument Neil deGrasse Tyson all the time, but again, he's just, somebody that everybody can relate to, a very intelligent black person. I feel it's a good example. He's going to pass on strong genes to his kids in terms of intellect, in terms of fight or flight management, just because he's black. doesn't mean he's just going to pass on all the genes that are typically associated with blackness. And no intelligent person could make an argument against that. They could only say, well, in big numbers, if white people mix with black people, this is likely to happen. And I would absolutely agree. But there's always deviations from the norm. And I don't think we should hold individuals, we shouldn't tie them to their stereotypes.
I agree with you, but like that doesn't sound like white nationalist. You sound more like civic nationalist.
No, I'm not a civic nationalist, because civic nationalists don't care about things like maintaining white ethnicity in the country.
But
they just care about.
But JF's
I sort of do.
You don't though.
I sort of do.
Because your argument is there's good pieces of any type of race, so therefore mixing will strengthen it, and eventually, like, you know what I mean? Because if you were white nationalist, you'd want only the white genes to be passed on.
Basically, I feel like if white people have sex with the upper echelon of black culture or the black race, because they have such small numbers in comparison, we will assimilate them into our race, and that will benefit us. That will have benefits.
Yeah, that's not white, really white nationalist. That's trying to. I don't even know what the word is. JF, is there a word for this shit?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. I know what you mean. This guy is a genetic elitist who acknowledges the reality of race, but he's not a white nationalist.
Well, wait, isn't everyone kind of a genetic elitist, considering you don't want to have sex with the most degenerate of people? Just by default.
Exactly. But that's what Ronny does here. He says, I acknowledge the reality of race. I acknowledge that on average, black people will be less, will have lower IQ, and they will have higher crime. However, in his strategy, you can see that race doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters to him is the personal characteristics of someone. Now, in the speech that you just did, Ronny, some of it is true, some of it is false. When you say not all, I agree with you, but there's no white nationalist that says all black people are this way or all white people are this way. So you're fighting a straw man there. However, when you claim that it's not a serious hypothesis that someone who is exceptional in their race, that their children will converge back to the average of their race, you are wrong. And that's the phenomenon I was trying to...
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? I can't hear anything. Can you guys hear me? Something's wrong. Oh, wait.
Jeremy? Yeah. We can hear you.
You're back.
I'm holding on to what you're saying there, JF.
Okay, so what I was trying to explain and what I've explained before, because of the phenomenon of regression to the mean, even the people who are elite on some characteristic in their race, they carry genes that just happen that they haven't expressed themselves in that particular individual. But yes, their children will converge back toward the average of their group. In other words, there are genes that are silenced in them, which come from the average group that they come from. And these genes will, there's no prediction, there's no way you can know that these genes will not turn back on in future generations. And so your children with this girl are more likely to be closer to the black average IQ than if you had chosen an average white woman.
Okay, let me ask you a question, because I'm open to the fact that you could be right, but it's dependent on how you answer this. And I'm going to acknowledge that you know a lot more when it comes to biology. So perhaps you could hold the key here. I would argue that, again, with the Neil deGrasse Tyson example, say his IQ is 140. He is equally likely to pass on intelligent genes as a white guy with the IQ of 140. Would you argue against that, or would you say that, no, there's this hidden shitty black gene that's just waiting to come out?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Of course it is.
With the idea of regression to the mean, I may very well answer no to your question. That with the phenomenon of regression to the mean, the baby of Neil deGrasse Tyson is being regressed toward the average IQ of blacks at 90, whereas the baby of an equivalently intelligent white person regresses only to 100. And so the surprising statistical answer to your question might very well be no. However, I will recognize we don't have specific, we don't have studies on that. But if our assumptions about regression to the mean are true, and Jordan Peterson's understanding of regression to the mean is true, I would say very probably the children of Neil deGrasse Tyson are less likely to be as intelligent as him compared to an equivalent white genius.
Okay, but you realize that you are making that argument based on large numbers. Like if we were to analyze 100 people and follow their patterns, typically that ends up what's happening, or that ends up happening, is that do have regression.
Wait, hold on. Wait, what? I don't understand. Where did you get the information that the racial part was actually key enough to change that? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, because you said yourself, there's no racial connection. And again, I will remind people that this, like, imagine if that happened, and let's just say JF's right. Let's just say he's right. Fine, okay. Well, look at the environment and said they might grow up in, and look at the schools they might be supposed to do it. I mean, Jews are considered the most high IQ people out there, especially Ashkenazi. But the thing is, back when they were back in Judea, many studies confirmed that they were not extremely intelligent. In fact, they were very much average, middle of the road, not very useful. And then all of a sudden, when they were pushed into intellectual fields, again, the environment affecting and coding for new genes, that now they also started becoming the highest IQ people. So I don't see how race in melanin is really enough. And I'm not just talking about just melanin, but overall, all the different racial divides. It seems too much based on the environment to just be race alone.
Well, you'll probably get arguments from both me and JF on this one, because I definitely do think there's a biological element. But I don't want to get too distracted from the specific point that I'm making, because...
Well, I didn't say it wasn't biological. I just meant that the environment has to affect genes to a certain degree.
I do agree. It's like a chicken or the egg thing. Like the environment plays off the biology and the two interact. And then because of isolation and long periods of time, you're going to have differences. But yeah, theoretically, you can always get one race to become another. It just takes isolation and long periods of time. But JF, I think that you're making the argument about the likelihood of Neil deGrasse Tyson's kids becoming unintelligent based off of an analysis of people in large numbers. If we were to just specify Neil deGrasse Tyson and assume that he has sex, like we control the variables, we assume that he breeds with somebody else who's intelligent, I don't think you could make the argument that an interracial couple is going to be more likely to have stupid kids, or kids that are more likely to commit crime just because the person's black. I think you can only make the argument that generally this is what happens because either black people aren't as smart, or they typically end up going back towards their own culture. But if we isolate all the variables, I don't really think you could argue that there's just something about blackness that's just going to make them less intelligent.
Here's the thing, and I'm not arguing with you to win, by the way. I'm arguing with you to educate. But I used to think like that. I used to think that regression to the mean is a statistical artifact of the fact that we work.
Recessive genes? Is that kind of what you're arguing?
The what?
Are you saying that there's some sort of recessive, unintelligent genes in black people?
Exactly. So what I understood then is that no, regression to the mean is not just a statistical artifact. It also refers to a reality. Now, we don't know exactly how this works. What probably happens is that the reason Neil deGrasse Tyson is intelligent in his group is probably due to a set of circumstances that will not necessarily reproduce themselves in the next generation, because when Neil deGrasse Tyson reproduces with someone, 50% of his genes will disappear. And so you'll have all sorts of recessive and polygenic effect that will be out. And
but
then
that there's even all the time,
crossover.
Wait. That happens in every case, though.
Wait. Jeff, if I may ask,
hey guys, I want to be clear here. We're creating a show, okay? And you guys are always interrupting. This is very disruptive for the audience. Do you understand that the quality of the audio is important, and that you guys keep cutting me off my sentences? We're doing something educational, and you two fucking retards are stopping me all the time. So just please try to be respectful.
No, he's right.
Just try to be respectful. We've already banished Jeremy once for his behavior. I don't want it to happen again. Now, just because you guys are so annoying, I've actually forgot my point. So just go ahead. And Andy, if you can take it for 2 minutes, I'm going to go relax. Fuck these guys.
Sure. Okay. I had to take an important call for a second because it seemed like an emergency, but it was someone pocket dialing me, and it was like 3 times in a row. So I was like, "What the fuck?" So I'm back. What the fuck just happened?
Okay, well, I apparently interrupted JF too much, and I don't know if the other gentleman is responsible for doing that as well. I just think we've kind of gone over the same things a couple times, and I'm trying to get down to the point.
I left for look at Jeremy. What happened?
Okay, so this is part of the point here. I'm going to say this straight out, and you know what? I know JF's not going to like when I say this, but I'm not being mean. I'm just being honest. I sometimes tried to wait till I felt there was a good enough, long enough pause, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I think he's done talking. Then he would continue, and it would look pretty innocent in real life. In real life, you'd be like, oh, he stopped talking right away after that, so he obviously thought I was done, and I wasn't. And same thing with Ronnie. Then JF, I think, just needed to cool off a little bit. So I'm not going to get harp on him too much. And I will say in the last stream I was an asshole, but this one I really am just trying to find out when people are just done, you know, and then interject when I think it is.
He just seems a little bit tense right now.
Yeah.
JF, are you all right? Are you?
Oh, I'm all right. I just wanted to go get a Diet Coke.
So you think they were interrupting you too much?
Yeah, we need to explain this to people. The quality of a stream. Why is Warsky Live such a great stream? It's that it's intelligent and we let people the chance to explain their stuff.
Okay. Cat?
Yeah. What?
I heard a cat.
Focus, Jeremy.
Jeremy, you have an attention problem. You really have an attention problem, and this fucks the brain of our audience, because an audience is scratching its testicles on a bed with no clothes on. They're listening to us. They want to relax, and you're bringing these ideas elsewhere. You're bringing the fucking cat when it's not the focus.
All right. Let's try to figure out where we could continue from here. Jeremy,
Yes.
All right. So go ahead and make the point that you were trying to make, and we'll try. Okay, well, try and figure this out. All right, JF, are you cool? You're cool with your Diet Coke?
I'm all cool. I mean, yeah, I have my Diet Coke. Just to be clear,
Awesome.
I'm not pissed off emotionally. I'm just trying to teach to the next guest in our life that, yes, you do have to care. This is not a true conversation that we're around a table. When you interrupt people, it fucks the stream of ideas, and it fucks the experience for the audience.
Also, Atavisonary will be joining us in a second. He finally fixed his shit. He just went to grab a drink or something, so he'll be back in a second. You two cool, by the way?
Oh, me?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
All right, cool. So, Jeremy, go ahead and make your point, my friend.
Okay, so my basic point was this. A lot of this whole ethno-nationalism is based on the idea that races are, like, there are some things that are going to be inherently different between races, and inherently different between human beings in general. You, Andy, are white, and you could look at someone who has the exact same genetic lineage as you have, might have red hair. You would never create a red-haired ethno-state because it's very, very unimportant when it comes to the overall coding into a better society. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't have an effect, and it doesn't affect a lot of other things. I was making the point that I think it's very exaggerated just how much. I'm not a race denier, and I'm going to say this so everyone understands. I am a civic nationalist, so I will not be one of the people supporting the quote-unquote ethno-states. But I think that it's a little bit much to say that things that come along with the race are really as important as people make it out to be, because it ignores other factors. In science, you have to take one variable at a time, and race is one. It's a real factor in people's behavior, but there's all sorts of other things like nutrition, education, which I know are smaller, but then there's the big one, the nuclear family. There's been tons of studies showing that the most common traits in anyone who's in a prison is more likely that they're probably from a single mother household. And these are all things I don't think you can ignore. And inbreeding is another one. But these are all factors I think that really prove that the ethno-state is a little bit of a hallucination. It's a bit of a utopia that will never happen.
Well, I don't know. I kind of agree with that. By the way, sorry, I just got here.
Suck, man. This is Atavisonary, everyone, by the way. He is an author, and your book is called Smart and Sexy or something.
Yeah, it's called Smart and Sexy,
Nice.
and that's actually a reference to sexual selection and evolution. I was not referring to myself or any other individual person. But I mean, so you talk about the fact that it's single motherhood, and I agree that's a big problem. But I don't think you can assume there isn't a genetic component to that as well. I mean, you know, why are blacks so much more likely to have broken families, right?
Exactly.
I'm not saying there isn't an environmental influence either, because there was a huge change in the last, 100 years between, the early 1900s and today. So obviously it can change, and that's for both whites and blacks. But historically speaking, they've always had a higher rate of non-nuclear families. So assuming that these sort of traits don't have at least some biological component is a little bit, it's an assumption too far, in my opinion.
Well, I don't believe that there is no biological component, and I actually think that overall the environment will affect long-term biology, and it would take a few generations to even fix the quote-unquote problem, and I think it is a problem. But I think that, like I said, first off, I'm very much open to studies, and this is why I was actually going to ask JF about some of the research that led him to this, because I'm not going to say he's wrong. I just wanted to kind of look at it myself. But I think that there's a good amount of evidence to show that there's more to it than just the fact that you're black. And I mean a significant amount more. But argue what you want. I'm willing to hear it.
Well, if you want the good evidence about how much is biological determinism, I would go with twin studies. What is it? The Minnesota study of twins or something is really good. They do not just IQ, but also other personality traits by a guy, Bouchard. Another guy, Plowman, and it's his last name, in England, has done a lot of very, very large twin studies. And seemingly from these twin studies, if they're identical twins and they have the same DNA. So the amount that they vary from each other gives you a hint about how much is being determined by environment. And it's kind of remarkable how little or how many commonalities between twins, at least on a large scale, when you have these large scale studies, it does seem to be that their personality and IQs are very, very closely matched, even if they're raised apart.
Yeah, and I'm not going to deny that. I will say a caveat. So this doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means, you got to be careful. Twins are not very common, so I would definitely like to see this continue. These studies continue, so we really can get this down to more fact instead of just theory. How do you spell Plowman? I kind of, I want to figure this out.
Plowmin. Oh. Plowmin. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And just for people who don't know, the twin studies are twins who were separated at birth, and then
I mean, there's a variety of them. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Jeff, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I mean, accidental interruptions is fine. Don't get me wrong.
Imagine, Jeff,
it's just when the person is in a stream of a sentence and they get interrupted. That's where it's not very comfortable for the ears of the audience. But yeah, Plowman is just a guy who wrote a book about this. It's a book that cites hundreds of studies, but as far as twin studies showing that things are heredited, it is a pillar of current science. It is something that no one questions seriously. There can be imprecision in the percentage that they attribute to genetics, the percentage of variance that's explained by genetics, but the idea that twin studies are very strong and very close to reality in terms of detecting minimal genetic effect is absolutely unquestionable. It is thousands of studies that confirm this.
Okay, and thank you. And I do want to apologize. I was interrupting a lot, although I am really trying to wait for pauses,
I think I was more guilty of interrupting. You were just, from Jay's perspective, just kind of taking the conversation in a different route. But I think it was me who was mostly just anxious to get to that definitive point.
It's all good.
So I apologize for that.
No problem. As Andy knows, all of my performance here is an act. I am a WWE contractor with Andy.
Yeah.
I don't even feel the
He
frustration.
doesn't even have a PhD. He's like an actor. He's just an actor. That's all it is.
We need Andy to just come in and be like, guys, shut the fuck up and let this guy finish. We need some more classic Andy interruptions.
If you're upset about something and you'll get enraged and freak out, like, just know it's fine. It doesn't mean that you hate the person. A lot of people have these ideas that someone will freak out on someone, and then like the person's in their head like, he must hate me. Nah. Have fun. If you're angry at me, call me whatever the fuck you want. All right.
That's the nature of the show, man. That's why people tune in.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of the reason why people tune in. So.
All right, I'd like to talk to Atavisonary and learn a little bit more about what is the main theme of your book, Smart and Sexy.
Well, so basically the idea is that there are biologically based differences in cognition between the sexes. I go over many different types of things. I talk about evolution, sexual selection at various points, but I think the main takeaway from the book is basically that it seems to be the case that to a substantial degree, intelligence is X-linked, and many alleles that would code for higher intelligence seem to be recessive. And I think, I tried to do it persuasively, show that this probably is what explains the greater variation in male intelligence distributions compared to closely genetically related females. And I don't really think there's any other good pattern which can explain the variability. Now, that doesn't mean hormones and other things don't play important roles. They do. But in my opinion, that would be more mean alteration, like shifting the whole curve to the right or the left. Whereas it's this X linkage that I think would better explain the variability. And so if that's the case, then the past 100 years of feminist whining about women not achieving as much is not based on discrimination or anything like that. It's that if you look at the far right of the bell curve, there just happens to be more men there, so they get those eminent positions. But it works the other way around as well, because on the other side, there's also a lot more men who are low intelligence or mentally retarded or have some other sort of problem along those lines. And so basically, in a way similar to race realism, but you got to think about it. If it's you and your sister and your intelligence varies greatly, it's like it's harder to explain. It has to be more nuanced and subtle why, when you're that closely related, there could be differences in intelligence like that. And so
what you're pointing to, oh, go ahead.
No, finish. I'm good.
Okay,
Yep.
So what you're pointing to is what has been referred to as the enlarged bell curve for men, where men are they have the most geniuses and they also have the most retards, and the contraction of the bell curve for women, where women of similar genetic relationship to a group of men, the woman will be closer to their average, as opposed to men who will tend to be more all over the place. Do you think that there's an evolutionary reason for this?
Yes, actually. My guess is that there is an advantage to accelerating evolution in certain circumstances. Like if the environment changes, you want to be able to change with the environment as quickly as you can. And so one of the things I cited is like it happens in bacteria. It's been shown that they switch over to a more fault-prone replication system, which obviously introduces more mutations in the situation where they're stressed out, like they don't have enough food or there's some problem. And so it's kind of like a high risk, high reward thing. Maybe they'll get a new mutation will make them better adapted and they'll continue on. And I think the X chromosome serves a similar purpose, and women kind of embody the low risk, low reward side of it, and men represent the high risk, high reward. So when there is, thanks to the just randomization of the haplotype on the X, a man can potentially have many more children because because we're not just talking about IQ here, right? I mean, if something is affecting the brain, it's probably affecting intelligence, but probably other behavioral things, you know, other psychology or whatever. And so if there's a bad combination or bad alleles or mutations, that gets wiped out because they get exposed, right? If there's good ones, then potentially you could have a lot more children and he could spread that wider. So it's essentially a way to accelerate the spread of good haplotypes. And essentially, since we're talking about behavior and brain, that kind of stuff, you would think that it's easier to modify your behavior than it is to modify, you know, say the length of your arm or something like that. And so that's sort of my theory as to why it would kind of end up like that with that system.
So, my personal view on this, I've always framed this like that in my mind, is women, they have a uterus, and so they own the device that will be the limiting factor to reproduction. Whereas males, on the one end, they are limited to their woman if they are monogamous, but also there's other women who they could potentially inseminate. And so the way I see it is from an evolutionary perspective, as a consequence of this fact, women are risk averse and men are risk seeking. And it's also linked to the fact that they often term it this way. They say we have 2 times more women ancestor. We have 2 times more women ancestor than male ancestors, which means that males actually get to inseminate a lot of women, whereas females they have a limit on the number of babies they produce.
Certain men.
And do you think that it's as a consequence of this that men are more risk averse in their evolutionary strategy, in their reproductive strategy? In other words, and someone phrased it this way in the Warski Ghetto, he says men are the crapshoot of evolution. But that's they're trying to be the genius, because the genius or whatever characteristics puts you ahead of the curve, whatever that characteristic is, as you say, it will lead to a greater reward because you potentially have many women interested in breeding with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the behavioral aspect to it. But this is what I would say is the mechanism of how it comes into play. How does it occur in the first place? Because, you know, if men are to be the ones to find either the good or the bad genes, the good ones to spread and the bad ones so they can just whatever, there needs to be a mechanism for that to occur. And I think hemizygous exposure on the X chromosome is that mechanism, if that makes sense. And so it would, of course, make sense for things like these different behaviors and stuff to get tied to it. There's another thing to consider, too, is that, you know, testosterone, I think, comes in sort of like if you get a new mutation, like it's a brand new mutation, right? And there's something, it's possible for an allele to be sexually antagonistic, and by that I mean if it appears in men, it helps them reproduce. If it appears in women, it interferes with it. So, for example, if it's an allele that causes a more masculine brain type, perhaps that helps a man when it appears in his brain to be more successful. But then his daughters will inherit it as well, and it can cause problems. And I think one of the major reasons for the hormonal things, or not the only thing, but one of the important things that they do is over time, as these sexually antagonistic alleles appear, they can be inducted into the regulation system that's already built in and sort of like make sure that those good alleles or whatever are expressed in men and not expressed in women, and then vice versa. So it's sort of an interesting interplay between the hormones, but I think it's my opinion that this is an important aspect to the regulatory role of testosterone, if that makes sense.
All right, maybe we can go around the table and see what people think of cognitive differences between men and women. Many of us have experimented with many women. So, Andy,
yeah, of course.
After.
Yeah,
yes?
no, like 100%.
What did you detect?
Huh?
What do you detect as a difference generally between men and women?
Okay, hashtag not all, obviously, right? But we both.
No,
Like I'll start with that obviously, because, for example, if we're gonna talk about like physically and not mentally, not cognitive yet, just physically, right? Yeah, there's women out there who can beat the fuck out of me, who are like in the UFC or a trade. But let's be honest, if I went to a mall right now, I could take out most women out there, right? But now cognitively, they more emotional. They like jobs that, like you were saying, that are not risky. Like you don't see many construction workers or people working in towers who are women, right? Like they prefer like secretary type jobs or whatever. So there's that. In relationships, a lot of women are insane. Even women, after being insane, will be like, "Hey, I was insane there." Whereas men, hashtag not all, try to look at things logically. This is from personal experiences. And anyone who's like, "Well, no, it's not really like," come on. All right. No,
Yeah,
I
no,
don't beat women. I'm just saying if I had to go through a mall, I could take out all the women out there. If there was a zombie apocalypse, I
it's
prefer to
interesting
battle.
to see where your mind goes there, Andy.
I'm just saying with the physical aspect, okay? But hashtag not all.
Well, it's true, right? Which is why women shouldn't be in the military. But it's still funny, it's still funny the way you said it.
No, yeah, no, I know 100%. It's a little bit extreme, but I will. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna say this right. I won't do that. I do not plan on heading to a mall and physical. But if I had to, okay. All right, that's my point there.
Arokoda $5 US says, Andy, JF, do you think we can use the nanites, nano robots, to close the IQ gap? Or maybe use CRISPR, gene editing, to change the genes to close the gap? Yeah, you can do that, and eventually you're going to get fucked by an AI who will control your babies and make them the way it wants. So don't do it.
Nah. I want that. I want fucking robotic humans in the future. I'm down. By the way, I was messaged by someone who wants to do that talk. That's I'm in for that.
Okay.
What talk?
Well, I am strongly opposed to genetic editing in humans. Would you guys genetically edit humans?
I mean, well, do you consider like just getting like something as simple as corrective jaw surgery to be that? I don't think.
No.
Yeah. Well, then I don't. I think it would be terrible because I know you're talking about way more than that. You're not talking like even Blair White wouldn't be considered that. I don't think because you're not changing it at the chromosomal genetic level. I don't want to see what could happen, especially since the first few times you do that, you're going to end up with exactly what you see in Fallout. The first few times, guaranteed.
I'll say real quick that I would love to live in the Fallout universe. I love the video game, and I'd want to experience that.
God, no.
Yeah, I think people want to experience something like authentically tribal. Like we kind of like live vicariously through sports teams and the movies we watch. And I think people are craving something real, and that's why people are getting so into politics these days, because it actually affects their real life, and there's tribal aspects to politics, of course.
Well, yeah,
Join the military then.
I mean, think about like this whole thing too. Like, we work our jobs to buy food and survive, and we do our hobbies, and then we just die, right? Now imagine you had to Mad Max fucking shit, If you were born in the world of Fallout or Mad Max.
There's no reload in real life, man.
I'm aware of that, and that's the reason why I'd say I'd rather just join the military, which I do plan on doing eventually. There's a lot of things you could do to do that. I've started hunting a lot because I don't like the fact that you can literally get like meat on a goddamn styrofoam piece of shit.
Hang on, sorry for interrupting, but there's a difference between we can be home and relax and chill, as opposed to we have to go out there and do something. You know what I mean? Like Fallout, you have to survive. So you're constantly having to do that. The military, you don't have to do that. At least in Canada, you could just chill at home and be like, Well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, of course, because Canada, what a scary military. I'm so scared.
Huh? Sorry.
I'm not. No, I'm saying I'm not afraid of your military. You guys, most of what we do here in the U.S. is what gets done around the world. Special forces, dude. That's what I'm talking. I'm talking straight up SEALs. That's where I plan on going. You can't say no to that once you're in.
But you don't have to, yeah, but you signed up for it if you're in, right?
That's the point.
Yeah,
That's
but I think you're missing my point of having to live in a post-nuclear world where you have to meet gangs and create a city and do all that, as opposed to you're signing up for it.
Okay, well, are you sure you'd want it to be to that degree? What about like a post World War II kind of society where no one's nuked, but we're in shit,
I'm just in fantasy land, man.
You're talking about Fallout. This is already Fantasyland. What are you talking about? This is LARPing to a degree I've never seen.
Yeah, and then
I like this Fantasyland talk. It's interesting.
No, but you took my LARP and then you made your own LARP out of it. Yeah, I'm LARPing right now. People in the chat are being like, Andy, you die in a second. Fine, whatever.
This is just fun now. Nothing personal, Andy. This is just fun.
God forbid we have fun for a fucking second, Jeremy. Piece of fucking... Go ahead if you have a better topic.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying I have a better topic. I'm saying I don't mean any offense. Relax, dude. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm having fun here.
I think people in the West are tired of this kind of like materialism that is dominating. It's the new religion of the West is Netflix and chill. And there's no real substance to it. And I fear Islam is going to continue to spread because, hey, at least those guys think they're gonna get a bunch of virgins or go to heaven. They believe there's something more. And I worry, just like Richard Spencer says, and so many people say, that the collectivist mentality, if we don't have something more to believe in than just Netflix and chill, I don't know what's going to unite us. And perhaps that's kind of why I've gotten more into the whole white nationalist thing, because I do identify as a white person. I do want to kind of live more than just TV and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I think that's true. I definitely think that's true. In fact, I actually have a series I've been making lately called The Importance of Taboos and Shame. And I talk about how useless pornography is, how useless recreational substance are, and how we are starting to replace having a girlfriend with that because it's easy. With that being said, I think that it's something that kind of starts to happen what you were talking about, where like eventually when we become this advanced, we're not meant to survive. We're not meant to thrive. We're meant to survive. So we don't know what to do. But that being said, I think that there are people out there who start up the Marxist kind of beliefs, and those are the ones who make it that easy to do it. To think about it, like if you knew that there was no social safety net, like a welfare state, do you really think you wouldn't try to survive, at least from a work standpoint? You would actually have to bust your ass to make money?
I think in ways it could kind of cut the fat from society, like in order for species to evolve, you kind of have to have the shittier genes not producing. And unfortunately, it's the reverse. The smart people aren't reproducing because they're onto, building their careers and materialistic kind of endeavors. And the stupid people are breeding like crazy.
Well, if you keep in mind, a lot of this has to do with a very large misappropriation of women's time, especially trying to get them into jobs they're completely unsuited for, like engineering and all these things, where they only have a limited window to actually produce children. I mean, there's a reason the birth rates, the more quote unquote developed a country gets, the birth rates just drop. And a large part of that reason is instead of, having women focus on what it is that they should be doing, they're going into careers and they're going to Marxist studies departments and all this stuff. And how much better of a situation would we be, even if we had all this Marxist crap, if women were actually producing babies still?
Yeah, well, okay.
And then not only forget that, but there's some very interesting studies done by John Lott where he goes over, because the 19th Amendment was not the first time women were able to vote in America. There was actually certain states, especially in the West, because they're trying to get more women out there, had instituted it at different times. Every single time, within a couple years of them having the franchise, the size and scope of government increases dramatically. I mean, there's very substantial differences in the kind of state that was decided by men only versus the kind of state that has a lot of female influence on it. It's very, very different. And a lot of the things that we complain about are exactly the kind of things that women like to vote for.
That's actually a very interesting subject. I will read a couple super chat, then I have a question for you on that. Gabriel Lopez, $10 US, says Canadians have a military. Bet it got renamed Willitary and it's full of soy faggots. William de la Herta, $10 US, paying to play. Want to jump on for a 2-minute to add clarity to some of the IDs. I don't know who are you, and you would need to tweet me in DM if you want to jump on, but we already have plenty of people. So Atavisonary, on this question of women influencing the size of the state, it was my impression, but you seem to be claiming that there's historical data outside of the current growth of the state, because it's almost unquestionable that it did happen in the US, in Canada. But do you have a wider look at it, and do you have historical examples where this happened?
Yes, I can show you these studies if you give me a second. But basically, this guy John Watt, and he's most famous for talking about being an academic who's pro-gun, which is pretty unheard of. But he did a series of these 2 different studies where he just kind of looked, because, you know, as the U.S. was growing, one state at a time would be added, right? And they'd all be democracies. But if you think about, just like any other type, men are the risk takers. So in these Western states, when they're early getting going, there was a lot more men going there first than women. And so one of the techniques, they're like, well, shit, we'll just give them the franchise and maybe they'll move out here so they can vote. And that was literally, is like, just how do we get more women out here, right? And so you have this thing where over different time periods, different years and different places, women get the franchise at different times, and he's got a nice little pattern. So if you give me 1 second, I can forward you both of these if you want to take a look at it.
By the way, Atavisonary, or however you want to pronounce it.
Atavisonary.
Atavisonary.
But you can call me Roderick.
I'll call you Roderick. Okay. By the way, I found your book, so cool. With that being said, I actually think one of the societies you were trying to refer to was actually, wasn't it the Greeks? I think the Greeks. I don't remember which city-state, but I think I know what you're talking about, with a few other historical examples of women voting for larger states.
There was a play done. And I don't think that actually ever happened, but it was kind of a satire where, and I'm not a historian. I'm sure someone knows exactly what it's called. But basically, women were given the power of the state, and basically all the men were obligated to have sex with all of the women, and they had to start with the ugliest one first. And so, like, all the ugliest chicks would come and force the hottest dude to fuck them one at a time. There's like a line.
Now, there's this problem with the vote of women, where women will systematically use the state as a tool of aggression, essentially, against men, against all of society, making it a more egalitarian and less libertarian state. But then we don't want to cut women from being able to vote, or else they won't have any control over society. Does any of you have a solution to this dilemma? How do we constrain the power of women over our society so that it's enough so that they can influence society, but not so much that they can make laws that violate the individual rights of men?
I know. Real fast. Go through malls and start fucking swinging away.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm going to invite Annika in here, by the way. She's a female, and she's cool. And maybe a female perspective would be interesting. So I'll invite her right now.
You want to start with
one of the interesting things, if you guys know Ann Coulter, she's gone on record in the past before saying that, oh, man, I wish women couldn't vote.
If I may offer the quote unquote solution that JF wanted, I think the best thing is a strong constitution, which the U.S. kind of has and a lot of other countries do. But the best thing about a constitution is I don't believe in the idea of taking away representative democracy, because eventually that makes it so that way the people on top have no consequence if they start abusing everyone on the bottom. But with that being said, I think a constitution could say not everything should go to a vote, and I think it could be made pretty clear in a stronger constitution than the one that I see in any country right now, that you cannot ask for more than put in a number or some kind of law or line for the states to provide people, because women primarily do this because men usually are the providers, but if they can't get it from a man, they'd rather get it from the state because maybe they're ugly. So there you go.
Well, personally, I'm not sure if you've heard of neo-reaction at all, but that's kind of where my perspective comes from. I don't really believe that democracy is fixable. I think it's just natural for it to go this way, one way or another. And it was pretty much inevitable, even if you were to take away women's voting rights, which would infinitely improve things in the short term, they would eventually get it back, because it's just natural for democracy to degrade over time. I mean, the Greeks talked about this. It always will turn into a tyranny because people vote for not things that make sense or are good in the long term. They just vote for their selfish needs now, and that includes men. Now, women are a bit worse at it. This is true, but it doesn't mean that, you know, men are great at voting either. I don't really think it's fixable. And so one of the things that we do talk about is the idea of voice versus exit, and that the better way to influence your opinion is through actions and not words. If you live in a state or in a place where it's poorly governed, instead of going to the poll booth, you pack up your shit and you leave. And eventually enough people do that it turns into a real shithole, and they either fix their ways or they live in a shithole.
Okay. I want to hear JF's response to this, you know, because he's the scientist of the group. I want to see what he thinks, because it was his question, actually, originally. So,
JF?
Well, the response to my own question?
Yeah, well, to my answer to your question.
Well, you say that it's the Constitution, essentially, that will be your tool to preserve males from the dominance of females?
More like everyone from everyone, in that, you know, democracy can usually become a tyranny. I think this is what they were going on when eventually people vote for things that should not be up to the state in the first place. But I think, essentially, yes, I would have a constitution be able to say, this is not up for a debate. This has nothing to do with the state. You cannot vote to have this be in the control of the collective.
I think the judges... Oh, sorry.
I agree, and then I say libertarianism is the protection against all subversions of the state, because you make the state so small that it wouldn't matter even if it's subverted. But as long as the state is not limited in size and limited in reach to the individual rights of people, we are faced with the problem. Shaolin Stacker also suggests another solution on Super Chat, $5 US, hashtag white Sharia.
May I say one thing?
What?
You were
I didn't hear
saying,
that.
Sorry, a visionary. You were saying that, you know, if women weren't allowed to vote, things would be a lot better, right? But then before that,
but it would still be bad. It just be, you know, I generally think that democracy is one of the major structural reasons why we're in the shit storm we are in today.
But
as far as your constitution,
I wasn't finished my thought. Just one thing, because you were saying about, you know, men's IQ is all over the place and women have a closer range, right?
Yeah, they cluster around the mean.
All right, so then why don't, instead of about like on gender, why not IQ? Like you take an IQ test if you're below a certain amount. If you're below 110,
you know, that's one of the interesting things. That would probably be even worse, and let me tell you why. Just because you're one of the things that's interesting about high IQ is that you can rationalize any number of things to yourself better. You're smarter, therefore you can rationalize why some bullshit thing is true. Mm-hmm. And so why is it that these very, very smart people in academia, why are tons of them, you know, communists? Well, it's because they're able to convince themselves that bullshit doesn't stink, right? If to some extent a dumb person can't jump through the mental hoops it takes to make Marxism a believable thing that sounds good, whereas a smart person can go into the dialectic and write, hundreds of thousands of words of bullshit about it. So it wouldn't really solve the problem because there's things other than IQ, and IQ does not protect you from delusion for some reason.
So what qualities of women do you think would make them bad voters?
Small tits.
Well, we were talking tits. Well, being highly susceptible to emotional reasoning, they see a picture of something, they're easily swayed by demagogues. And we were talking about it before, so that as JF mentioned before, he was talking about risk aversiveness. Well, women are risk averse, and they will vote for things that will protect them from, the slings and arrows of life. And usually that means a big welfare state and support for single mothers and massive transfers after divorce and all these horrible things that have basically quietly started making men go on basically a marriage strike, where they just say, well, I'm not going to be susceptible to these amount of liabilities because they're completely unreasonable. The only way I have to protect myself is through, like I said, exit. Exit speaks a lot more powerfully, actions speak a lot more powerfully than words. And so there's a lot of men who, even if they would want to do all that stuff, they're just like, I don't want to. I saw what happened to my dad. I saw what happened to my uncle. I saw what happened to my older brother. Me?
Yeah.
No, not precisely, but I do understand why people are doing that.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can still do that. I agree with them that getting married is a terrible idea, and it doesn't seem that any of the family formation needs that now. Now, if the choice was mine and I could go in, say I became the master tinker of the state tomorrow, I would completely wipe out all the divorce laws as they exist, and with the exception of gross negligence on the part of the father, 100% would go to him, assuming he was the provider. And most of the time, that's the case. It's like, well, if you want to leave and go fuck Chad on the carousel,
well, yeah,
go. You don't get shit. You don't get custody. You don't get money. You don't get shit.
It's bullshit.
Wait.
Yeah.
I actually have a solution for the disintegration of marriages. It's alligators on the street. If there were alligators everywhere, women wouldn't leave the home.
That's great.
Well, you don't need alligators, man. Just mice on the street is good enough, man. You don't need.
No, they'll learn how to ice skate. That won't work. They'll learn. Florida, start implementing that immediately. Hashtag JF is a genius.
Carney, 5 pounds, says women rank higher in 2 out of 3 of the dark personality triad. Men only rank higher in Machiavellism. I think that has to do with the fact that men have a longer history dealing with inter-tribe politics and tribe-level politics, whereas females were either not involved in politics at all or involved in local family politics from within the family.
I see.
Wait, about that whole let's move thing, I was talking before about the idea that if you have no voting system, by the way, JF, I'm really glad that we're both minarchists in this idea, but the idea of no voting system for who you want in office whatsoever, being that you don't have any power that can be taken away from those who abuse it, that oftentimes leads to countries that will not allow you to leave anyway. Even if they're all male, they might just say, we want to keep you here by force.
Well, there's different types of exits. There's physical removal, but then there's also, have you ever heard of Irish democracy? The only kind of democracy I like.
No, I have not heard of it. What is it?
Basically, part of the history, I forget exactly when it was, but the Irish were very unhappy about being part of the British Empire. And so and that was part of the reason the potato famine was as bad as it was, is instead of using their money system, they avoided it at all cost. And so they didn't actually have much voice or anything like that, but through just slow attrition and just stubborn cussedness and just non-cooperation whenever and however possible, eventually it caused it caused a lot of problems to the British ability to rule that country. And eventually, obviously, they were able to get out of that. But what they would do is, instead of using the British currency, they would trade in potatoes and focus on barter a lot more. But of course, when that the potato famine, when that fungus, I believe it was a fungus of some sort, went through and destroyed all their crops, they were sort of SOL because they were basically too dependent on one very it was basically the same plant, because that's just how potatoes breed.
Few people know this, but Andy's family lifestyle is based around Irish democracy, and all of his dealing with Sinead is based on potato exchanges, right?
We have potatoes at every meal, except for breakfast. I am sick of potatoes. Mashed, baked, fucking potatoes. Ugh.
Give them to me. I went paleo not too long ago, and I'm trying to lose weight. I'll take all your potatoes.
All right, look, I like potatoes. But every meal, I'm like, I get it, you're Irish. Actually, you know what they do there too? They call it crisps instead of chips. They put they have a crisp sandwich. So you take like bread, you put butter on it, you take your bag of chips or crisps, as they say, you open it, you put it inside, you squish it, and you eat it like that. And
sounds terrible.
Sounds terrible. It's fucking amazing. Love it. I love it.
And yeah, well, that could speak to the whole thing about democracy failing, in that everyone likes convenience, and let's be honest, part of the reason why we have an affinity for sugary foods and salty foods and that whole potato abomination of a sandwich you talked about.
I'm not saying eat it every single day. It's a treat. It's a snack.
I would never eat that. I'm sorry.
Have you ever eaten cake?
I have eaten cake. And
Why? Why have you eaten cake, Jeremy? It's not healthy. There's icing on it that fucks you. It's too much sugar.
I can stop anytime I want, Andy.
That's right, Jeremy. I fucking won that one. Next. Go. Who's next? Go.
No, JF, you take over. I'm done with this.
Okay.
I'm trying to scare Jeremy.
If we are changing subject, maybe I would go back to Ronny, because there's something I'm not sure we've even covered it. Ronny, what makes you a white nationalist?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because semantics are important to clear out, right? And as I said before, there's different definitions. So I think if you take that road, you could say, okay, you're not really a white nationalist. But if you look at it like, okay, shutting down the borders 100%, right now we do that, and over X amount of years, the country is going to go back to white. If you just let the numbers play out, and it's going to go back to white. And I think most ethno-nationalists would agree that using any sort of force is not really what they're about. So I think by definition, I'm a white nationalist, because I believe in shutting down the borders and letting X amount of years go by where whiteness regains, I guess, like a stronghold in Western nations.
But being in France and enacting that policy wouldn't even be enough to keep your country non-Muslim. So depending on the country you find yourself in, this may not even be white nationalism. In fact, that's civic nationalism. The border of what are you closing? You're closing the border of Canada, of France, of the US. Those are countries with racial variations in them.
Wait, I thought that France didn't have the huge implosion of Muslims until very recently. Am I wrong about that?
Well, France has about, I don't know the current number, maybe 10%, but the birth rate of Muslims is high enough, and it's maintained enough within the community such that we know that they will override some countries. France, Canada, Sweden are probably the first one who will fall.
Oh, because I thought you could just deport all of them, And I know people say, well, once they're born in France, they're French, but I mean, they're going to go with their families.
Well, I think you can deport refugees, and maybe not necessarily French-born citizens. I don't know the exact numbers, but you do bring up a very good point, JF. I think certain countries may have to take different routes. And, even a guy like Richard Spencer would say it's not just a one-step solution for every country. There could be multiple steps. There could be multiple ethno-states. Nobody really has the perfect solution. But I think what we would all agree on is we have to shut down the borders. And we also have to do other things too, like promoting the family, getting rid of abortion. Yeah, I understand blacks, have more abortions than whites, but if we're talking about like Muslims and immigrants, abortions are killing us. And that's probably equally as important as shutting down the borders. Again, to quote Richard Spencer, before there's a Jewish question or an immigration question or a black question, there has to be a white question.
But it doesn't seem that in anything you've mentioned that you integrate race in your decision making. All of the talking points you just dropped are conservative, right-wing talking points at best.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like if you're advocating for a majority white nation, like say 85%, like I do, I don't see how that's not fitting some sort of requirement of ethno-nationalists. Again, there's 1.0, there's different ones. But I'll ask the question to you, JF. What is your definition of the ethno state? What is it exactly that you would like to foresee? And then perhaps we can compare mine to yours and see where the differences are. I think that's the best route to take right now.
Well, first, I always say I don't define myself as white nationalist nor alt-right. I say it's a descriptive term that you can apply to me, and I'm fine with it, but I don't feel solidarity with political teams. However, if you ask me what is the definition of white nationalism, is to have within your moral preferences and political preferences, the aspect of the preservation of the white race be a primary value that you're not willing to abandon on, and that you're not willing to concede for other stuff. It's one of your primary values.
Right. I can understand that. Like I look at white nationalism very much through a political lens, as well as through like a cultural lens. But I honestly do not view it through an individual lens. Like say, for instance, I go to the gym. I live in a city, Scarborough, where it's like 1 out of every 20 guys is white. I go on the bus, I'm always the only white guy. And I would way much rather live in a white area. But I meet individuals from other races all the time that I get along with. And I could say, yeah, this guy is way cooler than Billy Bob that I knew from high school or whatever, right? There's always those deviations. So again, I really think the only way that you could find the hole in my argument is if you're coming from the perspective that you believe in 100% purity. You could say that my political views aren't necessarily married to like my personal lifestyle and involving like racial purity in my own decisions, as we kind of talked about before. But from a purely political point of view, disregarding maybe, I guess, like the philosophical and moral aspects to it, I think you have to just look at the nuts and bolts of it. And if you're advocating for an 85% white ethno nation, because you believe that in large numbers, white people are going to be the most likely to produce a culture that you enjoy, the most likely to be successful, one of the least likely to produce crime. That's just a logical conclusion to come to. That doesn't necessarily have to have this embedded, white people are just better than other people on an individual basis or anything like that.
I'm just so shocked that you have for people who have just joined us and don't know when we started, he has a black a girlfriend and he's a white nationalist.
Everybody likes chocolate.
Fair enough. No, but I'm surprised with her accepting this. You know what I mean?
It's all in how I define it. If I said that I'm a white supremacist in the sense that I believe every white person is just better than black people, like, Jimi Hendrix was a shitty guitarist because he's black. There's no way he could be good. I've literally met white supremacists who think that way. They're like, no, like anything a black person says is stupid. It's just complete ignorance. And I think that's the defining point between modern ethno-nationalism and your stereotypical white nationalism. But by definition, I think if you just look at the term white nationalism, white nation, if you believe America, Canada, France, England should be white nations, you are a white nationalist. So my goal is to convince, like, say, for instance, the Proud Boys and so many of these groups out there that like to claim that race doesn't mean anything, that it doesn't matter. I want them to start understanding the information and redefining what they are. Get rid of this whole civic nationalist crap. Just call yourself a nationalist. And if you want to do the smart thing, become an ethno-nationalist.
All right, we have Elizabeth Luker, $20 US, says, I will never understand why I can't say I am pro-white without getting hate, but no one bats an eye when a black says they are pro-black. There is nothing wrong with loving and being proud of you. of who you are, that goes for everyone. So guys, we're gonna soon end the show. Me and Andy will have a little talk after you guys are gone, but maybe we should head toward the concluding statements. And so maybe starting with Ronny, about what you take from the current discussion, and your final position on what I've said.
Yeah, I think we still have to clear up a lot of semantics and definitions, and really where the majority of the alt-right lies. If the majority of the alt-right is saying, we want a 100% pure ethno-state, then I would have to take a step back and say, okay, I'm not a white nationalist. But as I understand it right now, the majority of the community is open to a little bit of, quote, diversity. So that's essentially how I define myself. And again, just going back to why I feel comfortable having a girlfriend of mixed race, of another race. I do believe on some level, assimilation is real, and it's happened throughout history. And if we're not going to get rid of the amount of people that we have right now, say for instance, there's a 10% Black population in America, the best thing to do would be to breed them out. If you let them breed amongst their own, they're going to just build, and build. So the name of the game throughout history has actually been to assimilate. So if people want to say, hey, what I'm doing is leading to the destruction of the right race, I think I have a decent rebuttal against that.
All right.
I don't get it.
We don't.
I think Eddie's just stuck on the definition of white nationalism. But yeah.
Because there's got to be a different, you're pro outbreeding. Because if you were to race mix constantly, it wouldn't be the pure white, which I don't care. Again, I'm cool with your decision. I'm fantastic. I bet though, in the bedroom you can't do BDSM though, right? Because if you have a whip, then it's too close to the whole slavery thing, right?
I'm gonna prefer to just not comment on that right now.
Or do you role play?
I think that one's that one's off limits.
All right, fair enough. I'm just asking.
I bet they use a cotton gin.
Right on, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I know it got a little heated there, but I love these discussions, and I think these types of debates, you get thicker skin. Your buttons don't get pushed so easily when you're dealing with idiots on the street, right? So that's a big thing that I take from these conversations.
You gotta challenge your own opinions. You gotta challenge yourself physically, mentally, and morally every day. That's how you stay strong.
Right on.
All right, at Atavisonary, there were lots of technical problems, so I'm sorry you lost the first part of the discussion.
Yeah, sorry.
What are your words before you go?
As far as what you guys are talking about, they seemed a little bit reluctant. For most of the places, some sort of strongly encouraged separation, anything short of that is not going to solve the problem. Whites are not producing enough babies to overtake the newly coming groups, and unless some more stronger measures are done to specifically encourage separation or repatriation or something like that, it's a doomed cause. So if you're not willing to go there, you're not going to get anything. But then I can also say one of the big things, like I've tried to make a point of, is that misallocation of life actions by women is a big part of the problem. And if you were to get back to a more traditional style of nuclear family, it would go a long way in resolving the issue. Lastly, as far as white nationalist goes, I agree with all your definitions, but one thing I would like to point out, those trolls on 4chan with their "it's okay to be white" campaign sort of shows you that many people, the left, are going to define many people as white nationalists, even if by a rational definition like you use, it's simply not true, just for having that very innocuous statement, "it's okay to be white." And so from the perspective of the left, it's going to become harder and harder and harder not to be at least labeled white nationalists, even for people who don't want that label. And so from their definition, from their boogeyman, all of us are probably really super white nationalists, regardless of the the quibble about having a black girlfriend or whatever for Ronnie there. So that's one of the things to remember is, you know, you can define the words and we can do it reasonably, but that doesn't make the left reasonable. And so people are going to be labeled, they're going to be white nationalists because, you know, is it okay to be white or is it not?
Okay.
Right.
Oh,
Jeremy.
I just wanted to know, are we ending the stream right now? Because I thought we were going to have Anacon.
Yeah, well, Annika seems not to be joining, so we're gonna end the stream. Actually, me and Andy have to talk a little bit, and then we're gonna read super chats. But we'll leave you, and then I need to talk to Andy about our friend's ticks.
Oh, yes. Yes, I talked to him earlier today on the Kumite, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about that.
All right. Jeremy, your concluding statement.
My concluding statement is this. I actually agree a lot with JF, a lot more than I thought I would, believe it or not, about the preservation of white people. Because I believe there's a very big difference between, I feel there's a very, very big difference between the idea of never saying you can mix and saying that there's things like, you know, that are in race that you know, make you a completely alien person to everyone of every other race. I think there's a big difference between that and just simply saying, I don't want to see blonde and red-haired people get essentially breeded out. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I actually have been trying to raise money to go to Poland to help them and some activist groups I know there from family members and whatnot get the parliament to vote to leave the EU. So yeah. And do you mind if I just close out by plugging where you can find me?
Go ahead.
Okay. So you guys can follow me on Twitter at Jeremardus4. That is JEREMARDUS. You can also follow me at real_Jeremy_SOMERS on Instagram. And my YouTube channel is Arcion, which is ARCION. And thanks, guys. I think I'm just going to hang it up myself anyway. Have a good day, and thank you for having me back.
Bye-bye, all of you. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming.
dude.
It was great talking.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
Do you mind if I plug myself real quick before I hang
go
up?
ahead.
I have your links down
so-
there, by the way, as well.
Oh, thank you. My name is Roderick Kane. I run the website Atavisonary, and I'm the author of the book Smart and Sexy, which is on the intelligence differences between the sexes. Thank you guys for having me on. Sorry I was so late, but it was good being here for the little bit that I got, and I'll see you next time.
All right, bye-bye.
Man, thank you very much.
And these people were so confused. I was like, we need to end this and recover our safety.
I don't
in
get.
space.
Was I wrong?
I mean, you weren't wrong. They were not wrong either. It was just all over the place. There's nothing that's more frustrating than moderates who they don't even know where they're. They just agree with everything. I mean, I will agree with Ronny. It's fine. You can go out with a black girlfriend and be the white nationalist that in your loose definition of white nationalism. Yeah. Personally, I would say if you're that kind of white nationalist, is it even worth it calling yourself a white nationalist, knowing what the term is used for today? I mean, yes, I can agree that the big definition of white nationalism is, okay, anyone who's interested in a white nation. But you're interested in it so little that I don't even know if it's worth engaging with the label.
That's my point. Like, that was my point. Like, you don't... I feel like he's calling himself that for the sake of calling himself that. Like, you could be, like, civic or just a nationalist or what, like, Baked Alaska would say. He's just like, I want, 75 to 80% white people. Like, but to say white nationalist, we know what that definition means. Because everyone in the chat was freaking out. Did you see that? Everyone in the chat, and I'm like, I'm looking at the camera like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I apologize, guys. I truly apologize. But
and it does make him sound like a troll. I'm sure he's not a troll in his view, but it does make him sound like a troll because then he has to argue around all of these contradictions. I mean, personally, I've even have mixed race, half black wife, but but I was not a white nationalist at the time. And even if I was, I probably wouldn't have gone on the public space and says I'm a white nationalist. I would simply have said, well, this is my what I'm saying right now is this is my past. I was a different man in the past, but I can also take a little bit of contradictions in my life. I don't care if my political beliefs totally align with my personal choice, but then I would be a little reserved about using the label publicly.
I'll say he was cool though. He was nice.
Yeah.
You know, I was confused on certain portions of it, but you know, overall he was cool.
Yeah.
And what did you think about Jeremy this time? Because you snapped.
Jeremy,
You snapped, dude.
he drives me insane. This is the kind of brain he's all over the place. These people are not trained to entertain the public. It's like all of my effort on this show is keeping people on track. This guy cannot be kept on track. I'm sorry, Jeremy. All love to you, but entertaining a bunch, thousands of people requires having an ID, and everything you say must be aligned with the ID. He's all over the place, but that's who he is. He has attention deficits. So be it. Now,
yeah.
today I learned that Styx was he was campaigning for becoming the governor of Vermont.
Yep, he is. He is. He was on Kumite this morning. Gave his platform, his ideas. He's very serious about it, and he believes with his audience, if he comes on here and other YouTubers, if he can talk about his platform, he believes he has a chance. Because we were like, you know, I mean, good for him, but like, how realistic is this? I asked him that too, right? And he believes he has a chance with the power of the internet. What do you think?
It's a tough call. I don't think he has a chance. I think that when you understand what politics is, it's really a dirty thing. There's people, what they refer to this as, you know, the team on the ground. Well, it's actually a team on the ground that leads to people voting. They drive old people into the booth so they can vote. Winning at this with just a YouTube channel and YouTube contacts. Even if because what's the percentage of the people who watch us who live in Vermont? Even that is a big limit.
But what if he takes, you know, like his audience, our audience, all the audiences, right? And he finds the 500 people to sign himself in, right? And then the people of Vermont who aren't YouTubers like his platform. You know what I mean?
The thing is, it's barely about the platform. Politics is about the ground game. It's about having local groups everywhere in the state to bring them to the voting booth. I don't see it happening. When's the last time an independent candidate has won a state like this?
I do not know. No,
I mean, he quoted Bernie Sanders, and yeah, okay, Bernie Sanders may be independent, but as far as I know, he's very linked to the machine of the Democrats, and so
he had money, right? Campaigned, all that stuff.
Yeah,
because I think Styx was saying that he's not gonna be spending or raising any money at all. He believes he can just drive around to all the and hold all the, you know, like meetings and debate people, and he believes that if he debated anyone who's running with him, that he'd beat them. So
yeah, you know, it's positive to me, and I don't want what I'm saying to be interpreted as me not supporting him. I fully support him. I would love to see him governor of Vermont, but it's a big brick wall that's awaiting him, I believe.
Yeah, like I wish all the luck to him, and you know, I'll support him and all that stuff, but like the realisticness of it, I can't see it yet, but like who knows, man. You know, I mean,
maybe in the future you'll essentially need to be a YouTuber to become a politician. Maybe in the future, maybe there's some point in history where let's say because Trump basically was one of these candidates who made it for his personality, but he also had a grounding in reality TV for many years, so there were people emotionally attached to him. Styx comes with only a attachment to his fan base. I don't know how much people in Vermont that represents. It's gonna be a hard fight.
How about Jesse Ventura? Like, didn't he became the governor and he was a wrestler?
Yeah, Jesse Ventura. I'm reading about it right now. Between 1999 and 2003, he was the first and only member of the Reform Party. Well, that's a good example. I mean, I would so much hope that someone like Styx, who loves liberties, Styx said in his speech that in his video that he wants to not care so much about the left-right divide and recognize that liberties are being violated all over the place, both by leftists and by right-wingers right now. And so to have someone who sticks to the idea of liberty in that way, I really love the idea.
Same, yeah. He said he doesn't want to take any money. He wants no income from it. He won't raise the money, and he said, like what you just said, he'd spend like most of his time gardening and doing his own thing, and only when something important came up that violated people's liberties, then he'd make it, like start doing stuff, which is an interesting idea, I suppose. Right?
In terms of political strategy and signal sending, it's a weird approach. I think that a professional politician would have said, Sticks, don't say that, because people are going to use that later. I mean, imagine Sticks in a debate or in some sort of interaction, and his political opponent will say, yo, this guy has promised he will be gardening instead of being in office.
Exactly. I was like, I don't know how that approach will. I mean, we'll have Monsoon and we'll talk to him. Maybe ask about what he would do. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. So we have a couple of shows scheduled. Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Sunday being in 3 days. We have Mimir's Ed and. Who was it? Mimir's Ed. Oh, it's a We Was King.
Yes. Here we go. And radio? Is it radio again?
Yeah, Radio 1.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday, Styx will be coming on.
Beautiful.
And if you want, I can actually have Alze on Tuesday.
Yeah,
he
you
wants
were
to
saying,
debate all type.
Huh? Who?
He wants to debate alternative
All hype?
hypothesis.
Oh, all right. Sounds good, man.
No, he wants to debate a couple of other people, so we'll see who it will be for Tuesday, but he wants some.
Yeah, let's make sure whoever he battles has a Red Bull before the show.
What was the last person who used a Red Bull in Blood Sports? Was it? I saw someone drink a Red Bull.
I know I did.
You did? Okay, maybe it was you.
I remember I was talking to Laura Loomer. I drank a Red Bull and then it kicked in and I was like, "Arrgh," and I went into rage mode. I did speak to her though, and we are gonna bury the hatchet, maybe talk in the future. I still think what she did was fucking terrible, in my opinion. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Is it the tire story?
Yeah. But she's investigating the Vegas shooting, and she thinks something sketchy happened there. So she's been doing that for a while. And I don't know much about her besides that debate that we had and me screaming at her and saying horrible things. But we'll see. Maybe we'll see what happens.
I predicted that there was sexual attraction between you two months ago.
Not at all.
Bury the hatchet. I mean, next time, what is it? There's a progression there.
What do you...
You hated her, now bury the hatchet. Eventually, you get your dick sucked.
No! That is not happening. JF. I'm seeing someone who I love. It's great.
That's true.
And me and Sinead are doing awesome since the therapy session. So it's good. I do not want Laura Loomer like that. No.
Were there effects of the therapy session outside of the 24 hours? Did you change your approach to the relationship?
Yes. I think we had one argument and it was stupid. It was dumb. And it wasn't even horrific. And then we were laughed about it later too. We were like, "Oh, that's fucking So yeah.
All right. I'm glad. That's the goal of the 24 hours. It's that then you look at the whole rest of your life and you say, oh, well, that would be stupid to act differently in the rest of my life since I enjoyed that 24 hours.
Yes, yes. How do you feel about today's show? I feel weird vibes from you.
Yeah, I mean, I am very disappointed by these speakers. It's just sometimes we bring in new people, but they don't have a way to frame stuff so that it's a single idea and you need to defend it properly. We just got thrown with attention deficit people who just they cannot focus on a single idea, and that's very hard. Maybe if we only add Ronny, maybe we could have like focused and tried to attack, but we had Jeremy coming in, we had Atavisonary. It's not that they're wrong or that they are it's not that they're wrong on the scientific facts that they want to bring. It's that there's a logical problem and they tend to bring it to other ideas. As far as Atavisionary, well, I think that he's a specialist in his field and he was really thinking about these chromosomes. But it's important always on the public space to frame stuff so that the general audience is interested in hearing about it.
I think the what's his Ronny, like he didn't concede. Not that I was trying to make him concede, but it's sort of like he made his own definition of what white nationalism was, and you explained yourself like very well, and he didn't even go like, well, I see what you're saying. It's like sort of like, no, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. But we're sort of framing it on what we know it as.
Yeah, and the problem is, if you're saying white nationalism is wanting a 85% white country, it is so weird because it's true that we hear this from white nationalists or white advocates, but they kind of say this as, okay, it's a solution. It would be better than the current situation. But typically, white nationalists will tell you, I'm aiming for more. I would settle for an improvement of the current situation toward 85%. But it seems that Ronny is not aiming for more. It seems that he's saying that is okay. Let's keep it that way. But it's not clear that even a 85% white country could maintain itself. It's not clear that it would still be 85% white in 200 years.
Yeah, and it's the opposite, in my opinion, of what the definition is. Not that, like, again, I'm fine with it. Like, I was saying that, like, pure, like I was saying, I'm fine with it. I just think that a definition was wrong, like, in my opinion. But he was a nice guy, so it's all cool. Yeah. All right.
Let's read some super chats.
All right. Let me gotta do this. I'm gonna buy a third monitor. Now I need a third monitor so I can.
And it's too bad we didn't get Anika to join us. I'm sad because I sent her the link by DM.
Yeah, it was yeah, same here. But I heard from someone that she was around, but then I don't know. So
I didn't see her.
Yeah. So we'll let's just read some super chats. 3x4 architecture, $5. Andy, if you jack off too much, you will deplete your lecithin and cause brain/nerve damage. Also, stop smoking weed. Is that true?
Nerve damage? I don't think so.
Fuck you. Tavit Andros, $50. You read that? Thank you very much. Snooch, $2. Why the chuck can't I change it from $1.99? Snooch, $2. Cripes, do I gotta do this all night? Hot. I think it's like a scroll bar or something. Hot Perrier, $5. How do you reconcile the fact that your children will be mixed race while being a white nationalist? I think you asked him that, right?
Yep.
It was very weird. White, £2. I'm a white nationalist, but race mixing is good. In quotes. Snooch, $2. How the fuck do I change this to... Again, Snooch was fucking struggling.
Yeah.
What's your man? $5. He is proposing the Sargon plan. Breed basketball. Oh yeah, I think you read that one too. Thank you very much. Snooch, $10. JF, slay this LARP. Matthew Robinson, $2. White equals only 8% of global population. Hawaii again, £2. Hello, fellow whites. Alfred Saxon, 82, £1. Thank you very much. Vinny S, $2. Isn't the final result of this plan Mexico? Hot Perrier, $5. This guy doesn't understand the point of the trapno state. What's your man? $5. Outliers, children regress towards the mean of their race. Your children will have lower IQ than pure white. David Andros, $20. I'm not sure if you read this. Did you read this?
Well, you would have to illustrate because I don't see them here.
Oh,
if
shit.
you can screen share.
My bad. The audience can see it, but you can't.
And by the way, it's Wasatch Man.
Wasatch Man. Sorry. David Andros, $20.
Yeah, I read this
yep.
one.
All right. And you read this one from the Spike Man. Thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it. Harambe in Guantanamo. Fuck, sorry. $2. Our regression is the mean. Disproves this guy. You want to read on for a little bit?
I agree. Vinny S, $10. I'm pretty sure the Spanish tried this before. The result was the least developed part of Latin America. And Braid Shaft, $10 US. The advantage, this one I read. Thank you so much for your donation. Typhon 123, 50 NOK. And he is such a Portuguese lad. Mad respect. Pagan Goddess, 50 SEK. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Pog, $5 US. If you guys don't keep doing this, many people will suffer. Please keep it up. We can and will, and the beauty and light of truth will shine free. Tavit Andros, $20 US. I read this one. Thank you so much for your donation. White, £5. 25% American, 25% Mexican, 25% Jew, 25% Anglo, 100% degenerate. Barrett Shaft, $5 US. I find your racist description of Euro-Americans offense. Please apologize. Are there exceptions that prove the rule? Are there? How does a bell curve work, bro? Pog, $2 US. I would never say fuck Israel or anything, lol. Weep for the culture, $10 US. Ethno-nationalists are not dividing on race mixing. The answer is no. Miscegenation gets the rope. Gabriel Lopez, $10 US. Is 60% white European descent white enough to be white? Or at 60%, I'm black like Sargon? I don't believe in setting thresholds like this. I think that the only circumstance where you would have to set a threshold is if you do a white ethno-state that welcomes all whites across the world. Then you would have to set some sort of arbitrary threshold. Kev OS, $2 Canadian. Doesn't JF have a Hapasan? Well, I've answered to this. No, I don't. Pog, $2 US. Why is it legal to say fuck Israel? So weird. Okay, so they're talking about the system of oppression from YouTube Super Chat.
All right, I'll read on. Kyler, $5. I'm gay. Hot Perrier, $2. This goy is 56% wrong. Not Lex, $5. Andy, you're a sweetie. Keep your hands where I can see them. Edmund Ploppy, $5. If you want to drink some lovely grog, never pass on. Okay, come on. I can't say that. Adolf Honkler, 1488. To let our women be taken by other races is absolutely a losing position for white nationalists. You are a cuck and date Cuban because you just found out that your cuck leader is Cuban born. Barrett Shaft, $10. Remove your hats, gentlemen, and please rise. May we all take a break for a moment of silence for pure white American genes. JF, please play us anthem and say this is a news voice. Thank you.
This is a news voice.
There you go. Drew White, $20. Thank you very much. Isn't white nationalism only important because of the value of whites generally across the IQ spectrum? Mixed breeding with white identity, values, and culture is currently the only means to make America white again effectively. Snooch, $10. You figured it out, Snooch. Awesome job. Smash him, JF. $1. And message retracted, but thank you very much. Kyler, $2. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a cornball bitch. Barrett Shaft, $20. I'll guess. Keep the asbestos.
Asbestos.
Oh my! I'm a fucking piece of human shit. Oh my god.
Oh, the asbestosis. So he's talking about the disease that affects lung due to this material that's anti-fire.
Yeah. In between the walls, you know, like that little pink asbestos. Oh my! Wow. I don't even want to open the chat right now. In my home and stay 500 pounds because it's just channel. Because lips. Chance. Sorry. Because lips guys. And couldn't get white woman said, how can numbers be real if our eyes aren't real? Also, please read my previous donation. Thank you. Okay, so I read that. Thank you very much. Gabriel Lopez, $10. A stick no state. Fuck yeah. Vote sticks. Weep for the culture, $5. Race mix because my black science man. Does this dude echo? Stephen Duller, $5. I agree with JF's point of regression to the mean, but it sounds like Collar is looking to increase average IQ of blacks through eugenics. Vinny S, $5. Just wait until he finishes the sentence. Is that too hard? That's when you snapped. Gabriel Lopez, $10. Scratching my balls in bed and drinking Diet Coke. JF gets me. What your man? Or I'm sorry, Wasatch man? How do you say that again?
Yeah, Wasatch man.
Wasatch man, $2. Jeremy the Spaz kicked before liberalist stream. That was him. Dog bath, $5. Constant interrupting makes lesser YouTubers unlistenable. Talking over your opponent in debate just makes you sound like you're on your period. Snooch, $5. Women carry the DNA of every man they ever slept with for life. Hence the difference.
They don't.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. Eric Coda, $5. Andy JF, do you think we could use nanotees? Oh my god. Nano robots?
I read this.
Oh, you did? Awesome, thank you. The Prodigal Red Pill, £5. High IQ, when not combined with a healthy worldview, is only destructive, shown by pseudo-intellectuals of the alt-right. This logic equals Eugene's rule. Ericoda, $2. Andy, gene editing can give you a Big John as well. Awesome. What's up, Queen of Bands? $2. Andy, my last tweet. LOL, you're a woman beater. Oh, you fucking always clip me out of. Ericoda, $2. JF, I messed up. I didn't want this convo to happen. You want to read on for a little bit?
Gabriel, she was talking about the nano robots. Gabriel Lopez, $10 US. Canadians have a military, be it got renamed the military and it's full of soy faggots. Damien de la Horta, I played paying to play, want to jump on. I read this one, but I didn't know how to reach you. Kearney, £5. When you no longer need to survive, expansion and war are the only option. I vote we head to the nearest planet, try and find aliens and dominate them. Shaolin Stacker, $5 US. Thank you for your donation. I read this one. Pinky Culture, $5 US. To answer JF's question, we don't have direct democracy. This means one demographic can't ruin the system, at least in the US. Well, it doesn't matter if it's different demographics getting together. Kearney, £5. Women rank higher in 2 out of 3 of the dark personality triad. I read this one. Yuan, $2 US. Just have black people on the street. I don't know what that means.
That was in
Lucy
reference to that joke you made about having alligators on the street, and then that was donated.
Oh, God. Lucy Lynn, $5 US. Lowering standards to allow women in branches of the military and college STEM fields especially is having a destructive impact on our society. Roast My Toasty, $2 US. Starship Trooper, book, government, veteran votes only. Dark Lord Vul, $5 US. To limit female power over the state, start a large-scale war, make women draftable, also make that draft chance equivalent to their population. L. Holiday, $2 US. What sexualities would be welcome in the ethno-state? I don't know that there would be restrictions on sexuality.
Yeah,
White,
okay.
£2. Go ahead.
White, £2. Jeremy has given me brain cancer. Matthew Robinson, $4. This is not white nationalism. Elizabeth Lurker, $20. I will never understand why I can't say I am pro-white without getting hate. But
This one I read.
Oh, you did? Awesome. Thank you,
Yep.
Elizabeth. We appreciate that. Robert Harrison, $2. When will the revolutionary phenotype be released?
I'm working on it every night.
There you go. Adolf Honkler, $5. Andy, don't make fun of the guy for dating. Oh my God. Okay. Where am I? There we go. Connor de Boutelier, €5. The Irish famine is a myth. Our food was taken at gunpoint. Listen to this Chris Fogarty on Red Ice. Love from Ireland. P.S. Andy's girlfriend is such a dub. She is. Vinny S, $5. Andy, favorite Fallout faction. You should play it on Purple Dragon. I see what you did there with the heart and the dragon. Nice, nice. Fallout faction. That's too loaded for me. That's way too loaded right now. I'll think about it. How about that? Producer Chris, $2. Stand for nothing and you'll fall for anything. Vinny S, $2. Portuguese plus Irish equals cute babies.
Nice.
Yeah. 1001, $2. Let me be on as a black white nationalist. No jive. Wait, for real? John J, $5. JF, sing for us in French.
La li la 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 la. That was la la li la in French.
Carney, £5. Britain is a good example. It's never been seen as one people or country. There has wars between Scots and the English. It might be a ethnic problem. A Trickleson memester, $5. Viva la Oh, fuck you. That's a meme from this morning where it just didn't stop and I was yelling. Eric,
and what is it? What's the Raza?
Every time someone donates and says Viva la Raza, Failure plays this song that goes Viva la Raza, and it's like da-da-da-da, and it goes on, and it's just, and it went one after another for like 10 minutes, and I just couldn't handle it. Eric Cota, $2. Good night, my crackers. Kyler, $2. Viva la Raza. Ugh. 1001, $2. I was serious. All right, then throw me an email, andyworski@gmail, or just tweet me, and we'll figure it out from there, my friend. And with
He's
that,
a black white nationalist, Andy.
that's gotta
This
be
would be the same thing as Ronny.
that's got to be a fucking troll, right?
Yeah. If you have a black person who's a white nationalist, I mean, ultimately, this is like saying I'm entitled to white access because I cannot contribute to society what I consider is the best thing for society.
Yeah, no, I don't get it. Maybe email me and we'll talk to you, we'll vet you, because I have to see, like, I don't know. But with that, everyone, thank you for watching. And the next show was on Sunday, right?
Yeah, and so Sunday is one of our debates. Remember, it's the We Was Kangs.
Beauty.
It's going to be fun.
That's going to be really fun. Everyone, thank you for watching. We'll see you all on the next show. Peace.
Bye-bye.